Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Tuesday, Vince. Fall camp starts this week, baby. We are ready to rock.
Yeah, buddy, we're there. It's I would call today Christmas Eve, if Thursday is Christmas Day, and I realize there's a day in between, but we get Marcus Freeman press conference today, which will go live at 2:45. Some people were asking how Irish Breakdown breaks up who goes where and who does what. Well, you and I, we drew the best straw. We get to do the show today, and Sean Stiers and Brian will be at the press conference, so you'll probably hear them ask questions and things like that because it will go live on YouTube at 2:45. But we got a show to do before we get to that. But that's the big kickoff to the fall is the big press conference. We'll get more information on injuries right up front. Rob Hunt, who's the head trainer, he'll probably lead that thing off with he goes rapid fire through all the injuries. So we'll get more information on that. And then we're just going to get Marcus Freeman, assuming he's going to touch on the USC rivalry, assuming he's going to touch on everything, 2026, because we don't get to talk to Marcus Freeman again for a little while, prior to the season starting. So this is a big one. This is where we all come together, ask a bunch of questions, have some fun with it. But before all of that happens, Trev, we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, man, we sure do. So originally we were just going to talk about the questions that we have about Notre Dame going into fall camp with it starting later this week. Very excited for it. Vince, I think we're all going to try to link up too at some point with me being up north. So hopefully we can get that on the calendar.
Darn right. Well. That's on my calendar. I can promise you that.
Love it. Well, now I have to go put it on mine. Vince forced the issue and he said it live on the show. So now
it's not in pencil. It's in pen. We're doing this. We at least have to break bread one time while you're in town.
Agreed completely. So we were getting ready to talk about that, which don't worry, we still are. We're talking about the questions that we have on offense and defense as this team prepares to go into fall camp. But a little bit before the show broke, obviously the coaches poll was released. Preseason coaches poll. We're in that time of year, Vince. It's preseason awards watch list. It's coaching award watch list. It's the top 25, preseason top 25. I believe the AP poll is still a little bit down the road.
It came out on the 8th last year because I looked it up because people were asking a couple of weeks ago. It came out like on the 8th last year. So we're still a little bit away from that, probably a week away from that happening. So, but we got the coaches poll today and we're going to talk about it.
Yep, we sure are. Like I said, it's that time of the year when preseason awards start coming out. Obviously, we're cranking out front page stuff. I mean, CJ Carr is on the watch list for the Maxwell. Drake Bowen, Leonard Moore, Boubacar Traore, they're on the watch list for the Bronco Nagurski Award, the award that Xavier Watts won in 2023. Anthony Knapp and Kirby Lambert, they're on the watch list for the Outland Trophy. And then I believe Marcus Freeman last week was announced that he was on the watch list for the Bobby Dodd Trophy. My memory serves me correctly. So a lot's happening, but yes, you're right, Vince. Notre Dame was obviously in the coaches poll. No surprise to anybody there. They came in at number 5 overall. So we're going to dive into this coaches poll, give our thoughts overall on the rankings, where Notre Dame is, and kind of dive into it, give our overall thoughts. So Vince, Notre Dame comes in at number 5. What are we thinking?
It's a little lower than I thought. I didn't think Notre Dame was going to be the number 1 preseason team or anything like that. The coaches poll is always interesting. I will say that because coaches aren't focused on other teams right now. They're focused on their team. And maybe they're focused on their week 1 opponent, things of that nature. And, how many coaches actually fill out the form? Is it, an intern? Is it somebody in the recruiting office or whatever, however they do it? And so the coaches poll, it's the only one we've got right now. So we're going to react to it. We're going to talk about it. I'm just not sure how much stock I put into it. But at the same time, look, Notre Dame's number 5. Okay. I'm fine with Notre Dame being number 5. And to be honest with you, I'd be fine with Notre Dame being number 5 when it's all said and done, because that means they're hosting a playoff game. So, however you look at it, Notre Dame's number 5. When you look at it, in case anybody hasn't looked at it yet, it goes Ohio State at number 1, Oregon at number 2, Georgia at number 3, Texas slides in at number 4. Then you got Notre Dame at 5, and then rounding out the top 10, IU, Miami, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss. So And then Alabama's sitting at 11 right outside the top 10. Everybody always wants to know where Alabama is. I think it's a little low for Notre Dame, but I'm fine with it. I think that a lot of people, coaches included, obviously, are going to be in the camp that Notre Dame still has to prove it a little bit. And their first 6 games of the season are not going to give them much of an opportunity to prove it. And so they may move up a little bit between now and, Miami, BYU, all that kind of stuff. Like they may move up a little bit depending on what happens ahead of them, that kind of thing. But 5 is fine. They're right there within striking distance. I'm cool with it.
Nothing in the top 5 really surprises me that much, Vince. To your point, I said this like a month ago. We got a buy, sell, hold about. This is either a buy, sell, hold or a mailbag question about where we thought Notre Dame was going to come in the preseason poll, and if we thought they'd be number 1. I said no. There's virtually 0% chance Notre Dame comes in at number 1. I think that's going to go to Ohio State. That held true in the coaches poll, at least. Obviously, the AP one is the one that kind of holds precedent when you watch and turn on a game on ESPN or NBC. You start looking at who's placed where, and that's the little ranking number on the graphic on the screen. That's from the AP poll. It's not
correct.
From the coaches poll.
Right.
Now, to your point about not proving anything yet, that's what I thought was interesting about this top 5, because then I would also pose that question about Oregon and Texas.
It's fair.
Those are ones where it's like you go back and forth. Those are kind of the 3 teams that we've talked about before that they're all kind of fighting for the same thing. Oregon's trying to fight to get into that next level of championship caliber. Same thing with Texas. Same thing with Notre Dame. So that one wasn't, but again, to your point, it's the coaches poll. I'm not pounding my fist on the table that it's blasphemous. I assumed Notre Dame was going to be top 5. I thought they were going to come in somewhere around 3, 4.
Yeah,
but
me too.
We're talking about a spot here, man. And I mean, to your point about games being able to be, games will have an impact on these rankings. Obviously, Ohio State and Texas play each other in week 2. Notre Dame is going to, unless it's Texas beats Ohio State in double overtime by a field goal, and then they just flip-flop spots. Like, outside of something like that happening, Notre Dame is going to move ahead of, I would assume, either team that drops, especially if Texas is the team that loses. But, overall, I'm not too bent out of shape about it. We see that very much the same. It is SEC heavy. As far as Notre Dame opponents go, Miami is ranked number 7. BYU is ranked number 15. And SMU is ranked number 20. So Notre Dame
3
has
ranked
already
opponents. Pretty good.
Yep, 3, not bad. Obviously, the remainder of their schedule, not a whole lot. I'm looking at the others receiving votes right now. None of, I believe, Notre Dame. Navy received 3 votes to be in here. And then outside of that, I don't believe any other opponent that they face so far this season is slated to get a vote. So not all too surprising, but overall, I don't have too much gripe with the top 10. Texas A&M at number 8 overall was pretty interesting, I thought. It obviously looks like some of the coaches also took a little bit of, I guess you'd call it liberty with the Texas Tech quarterback situation. I think if Brendan Sorsby was their starting quarterback, they probably would have been somewhere in the top 10.
Sure.
But outside of that, Vince, overall top 10, I'm not too upset about. I have questions about teams outside of the top 10, but big picture, I get where Notre Dame ranks. They're going to have the opportunity to move up. And now we enter that point in the offseason where it's the last time they were ranked 5th, this, and this happened. So,
yeah,
definitely be interesting to talk about.
Well, and, the coaches poll is going to release before the AP poll so that people talk about the coaches poll, because this may very well be the last time that anybody talks about the coaches poll. For quite some time. And so I totally understand why they are putting it out when they do, so that they can have a little conversation around the coaches poll. At the end of the day, I don't even know why they still have the coaches poll, but they do. And we're going to talk about it. I think, the top 7 teams that are on there, we've talked about this a bunch, right? We kind of feel like there's 7 teams with a legitimate shot of winning the national championship. And I think they got those 7 right. We can argue about maybe the order or whatever, but at the end of the day, if you take care of your business and you do what you're supposed to do, if you're in that top 7, you're going to move up to where you need to be or you should be when it's all said and done going into the college football playoff. So 5 is a fine spot to be. I think once the AP poll comes out, I feel like Notre Dame is going to be a little bit higher. I was actually anticipating, as you kind of mentioned before, maybe a 3 spot. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I agree with you, though. as you move through the rankings, there are some very interesting rankings in here and the spots where they are, just picking out a couple, I suppose, and we'll get into like the top games right now and where they have them ranked. But like, I kind of want to jump into this just a little bit. You've got USC at 14. You've got Michigan at 16. You've got Penn State at 17, which I find to be very interesting. Once again, Iowa ranked at the beginning of the year. I don't know how long that will last. And then, of course, you've got Clemson checking in at 23. I think those are the ones that kind of jump out to me. It's kind of a, hey, okay, that's interesting. Like USC being at 14. So here's an example. USC being at 14. They've got the schedule that if they take care of their business, they're going to be in a rocket ship going up the rankings. And being placed at 14, it'll be a very quick ascension if they win some of those big games that they've got on their schedule. I feel like Michigan's a little bit high. A lot of love there going to Kyle Whittingham and that new coaching staff. There's still a lot of question marks for Michigan to be ranked at 16, in my opinion. And then the disaster that Penn State had last year, being ranked at 17. Now, granted, I think they probably got better overall maybe, but it's going to be a bit of a rebuild, but they've got an easy schedule. And so being at 17, is it because they're in the Big Ten? Like coming off of last year, it's like a whole new staff, pretty much a whole new roster. I think 17 is a bit of a gift for Penn State as well. But I want your thoughts on some of the other teams that you see in here.
Yeah, unfortunately, in no way, shape, or form am I surprised that USC is ranked somewhere in the top 14. All offseason, this has been, and I mentioned this in the show yesterday, and maybe I had my tinfoil hat on a little bit too much. I just find it interesting that when Notre Dame beats USC and hasn't had a consistent track record of beating USC since 2010, there's no mention of this could be the year for USC and they could get it done this year. And now that Notre Dame's no longer on their schedule, I'm supposed to believe that Jade Maiev is the second coming of Caleb Williams.
Yes.
And this is the year that they make the playoffs. It is what it is. I'm sure it's just a crazy coincidence, whatever. But in no way, shape, or form am I shocked that the Trojans are ranked in the top 15 based on all of the hype that they've generated.
Yep.
Michigan being up there, they're such an interesting program to evaluate. Because when I look at what Michigan was, like after they won the title in 23, there was like this, big drop off or whatever. And to a degree there was. But in 2024, they still beat Ohio State. They beat Alabama in a bowl game where they had Jalen Milroe. And then last year, despite all of the off-the-field drama with Sharon Moore and everything going on there, they were still a 9-win football team. I have no idea how to evaluate Michigan going into this year. I like their head coach. They brought over Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator from BYU. So there are parts of their team that are trending in the right direction. Then you just have to ask yourself, okay, do they have the talent that they've had in recent years? That I don't know. Seeing them ranked where they are, I thought was a little interesting. I would have put them a little bit lower. Removing the Notre Dame hat and just putting on like a college football analyst hat, I would have had them a little bit lower than what they come in at, 16th. Penn State, dude, this is a program that I think just for whatever reason the college football world wants to be good so bad. And I just don't understand that. I mean, they might end up with a better record, but be a less good overall team talent-wise than what they were last year. I'm confident in saying that. Like everybody last year was making a big stink, which rightfully so. That is, well, they don't have Tyler Warren anymore. It's like, okay, fair enough. Now they don't have. I don't think Luke Reynolds is there anymore. I think he went to Virginia Tech. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are gone. Drew Aller is gone. The quarterback that stepped in, Ethan Grunkmeyer, is now also gone. And all of these top-level athletes that James Franklin recruited are gone. My question for the voters is like, okay, would you have ranked Iowa State this high? Would Iowa State
basically the same roster? Yeah,
right. Like they have Matt Campbell, they have Rocco Beck, they have a lot of pieces from that Iowa State football team. So would you have ranked Iowa State this high, or is it like schedule combined with the name of why they've cracked the top 20? There's a world where you could rank Penn State. I understand that, and they kind of set that precedent with, to your point, putting Clemson in at number 23, which I thought was interesting. With Iowa, it's death taxes, and Kirk Ferentz is going to get his program ranked somewhere inside of the top 25 in the preseason. That's kind of a
always. And they are the least flashy, obviously, team, but they win games they're supposed to win more often than not. They're just a sneaky kind of Big Ten team that nobody ever talks about. But here they are, obviously right at the bottom end of the top 25. Yeah. Clemson at 23 is an interesting one for me, though, too.
A lot of that weight probably has to be carried by Dabo Swinney. I get that.
Sure.
And are they the team that they were from 13 to 2022? Probably not. But I will also say that 2025 was also the outlier. They did make the playoffs and win the ACC in 2024. Now, it didn't look like in previous seasons when they won the ACC with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and players like that. But that season so far is the outlier. This is a big season for Clemson and getting propped up in the top 25. I think that's kind of a tip of the cap by the voters and some of the coaches that voted on this coaching poll of like, all right, Clemson, this is probably kind of the last time we could do this. They learned their lesson, I believe. I mean, what they come in at the preseason ranked last year? Gosh, I mean, somewhere in the top 10, I believe, because I think that LSU-Clemson matchup was a top 10 matchup in week 1 last year. So I think this is kind of their way of saying, we're going to rank you one more time because we have a lot of respect for Dabo Swinney, but this is it for you guys. Like, we'll see what you can go out and prove. But I'll be interested to see where this goes this season. And we're not going to have to wait that much longer. 25 days until week 0 kicks off.
Pretty exciting stuff. And I know, obviously, like you had mentioned earlier, they don't necessarily use coaches poll rankings when we're watching games on TV, but based on these rankings, there's some decent matchups here coming up this season, Trev.
There are. And Archer, I see you in the chat. All I have to say is if I'm Ryan Day or your guys' athletic director, I'm sitting down with Tony Petitti and being like, hey, brother, what the heck? How do we have to play what we have to play, but Penn State gets what they get to play? How is that equal? How is anything like that fair? Because there's a lot of games in here based on the coaches poll top 25. Ohio State's name is written all over it. Tons of potential top 10 matchups this season. Yeah. You get Ohio State has Oregon, number 1 versus number 2. As of right now, when they travel to Columbus on November 7th, they play Texas, who's number 4. They play Indiana, who's number 6. They also play USC, who's number 14, Michigan, who's number 16, and Iowa, who's number 22. So if I'm you guys, I'm sitting down with Tony Petitti being like, hey, bro, I don't know what we did to make you mad, but whatever it is, I'm sorry, because that schedule's nasty. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. But more matchups, obviously, in the top 10. Notre Dame has 3 top 25 matchups of their own right. Obviously, they play Miami on November 7th. They're the 7th-ranked team right now in the coaches poll. They travel out west to Provo for the first time since 2004 and play the 15th-ranked, as of right now, BYU Cougars and the number 20-ranked SMU Mustangs. Vince, are you surprised at all that Notre Dame has 3 teams, 3 opponents in the top 25?
No, not really, because I think that, obviously those are the 3 teams that you would circle if you're looking at Notre Dame's schedule, obviously. And I think, based on postseason success, based on, recent season success and the lack of turnover at the coaching position, all of those things, I think they all go into account, especially in the coaches poll, that I'm not surprised at all that all 3 of those teams are ranked. That doesn't surprise me at all. I think BYU is appropriately ranked. I've seen a lot of stuff out there about SMU. Some people are really high on them. Some people are not so high. So, I wasn't really sure where they'd end up, but I'm not surprised that they aren't in the top 25. Like, that doesn't surprise me. And I also think all 3 of those teams will be ranked when Notre Dame faces them too. Obviously, the biggest question mark would be SMU because it's towards the end of the season. A lot of things can happen between now and then. But I firmly believe that BYU and Miami will still be ranked, if not maybe higher than they currently are. So those 2 don't surprise me at all. SMU, I just didn't know where they were going to fall. And 20, if you gave me some truth serum, I would say 20 might have been a little higher than I thought. But overall, I wouldn't have been surprised just based on some of the things that I've been hearing about SMU. And, Rhett Lashley's not shy when he sees a microphone, so he's putting his team out there. And coaches listen to that kind of stuff. And so that also doesn't hurt the hype machine, down in Dallas. So not surprised that they're ranked. SMU with their actual ranking, maybe a little surprised, but I think BYU is appropriately positioned. I mean, they were just on the outside looking in last year when it came to the 12-team playoff. I think they're going to be in contention in the Big 12. I think where they are right now is appropriate. And I think by the time they get to Notre Dame, there's a chance they could be undefeated. And so I think that ranking is going to go up.
20 is higher than what I thought SMU was going to be, because I've seen a lot of like projected preseason polls coming out from ESPN and Lindy's and Athlon and PFF, and SMU was always ranked, but it was always around like the 22 to 25 range. I'm not upset about it from a Notre Dame perspective at all. Unfortunately, FanDuel only has lines out for the Miami game right now. They don't have anything out right now, I believe, for the BYU or SMU game. That is a game where Notre Dame right now is favored by FanDuel by 6.5 points. Obviously, that line is subject to change as November 7th gets closer. But I believe they also have odds out for Ohio State, Texas already, some other games. I think there's already a line out for Georgia, Oklahoma.
Okay.
But Georgia's another team. You know, they come in the preseason coaches poll ranked number 3 overall in the country. They play number 9 Oklahoma. They play number 10 Ole Miss. And then they also have ranked games against Alabama, Texas, obviously Texas plays Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. So the two dates that I constantly keep seeing are like, well, really 3, October 10th, October 17th, and then obviously that big weekend in November 7th. So definitely a lot of great football on deck. Bunch of great football. And it really supports the claim, Vince, that we've kind of been talking about this season is there's going to be a really, really good year of college football. But, you know, when I look at the coaches poll overall, top 10 teams are all headlined by a bunch of different quarterbacks that have been the talking point of the offseason. Obviously, you just look at the top 10. If you just take the teams away and look at who their starting quarterbacks are, you got Julian Sain, Dante Moore, Gunnar Stockton, Arch Manning, CJ Carr, Josh Hoover, Darian Mensah, Marcel Reed, John Mateer, and Trinidad Chambliss. That's the top 10. Thank you.
Well done. Yeah. Yeah, it's a who's who. I mean, that top 10 is a who's who. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. Again, I'm not overly surprised. And the 7 teams I think have a shot at the national title are in the top 7 in the coaches poll. So I think they got it right for the most part. There's never going to be a poll out there that I'm like, yep, they got it 100% right. It's just not going to happen. And so the coaches poll is no different. I think it's good stuff to talk about. I think it's fun to see finally an official preseason poll that's out, as opposed to all these prognosticators and things that put stuff out on social media and everything else. It's good to actually have something legit to talk about. And again, it's Christmas Eve for Notre Dame football because we got the Marcus Freeman press conference here coming up in just a little bit, and camp kicks off in 48 hours. So I'm excited.
Let me ask you this, Vince. Do you still have the coaches poll pulled up?
I do. It's right in front of me.
Who in the top 25, twofold curveball?
Oh, boy.
Who in the top 10 ranked in the coaches poll could you see dropping out? And who outside of the top 10 could you see jumping in?
It's pretty easy. Excuse me. Pretty easy question for me. I am not super high on Ole Miss, to be honest with you. Now, granted, they're right at number 10, so they are technically in the top 10. But I could see them falling out at some point relatively quickly. I don't know. I will see if they can do it without the Kiffin magic on offense. I'm just not sold. And so I think they could fall out. And I hate to say it, or maybe I don't hate to say it. I don't know. But I think LSU sitting at 13, I think they could pop into the top 10 pretty easily with their schedule and with the lane train and everything else going on. So those are the two that I think could flippy floppy. What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely some in contention here. If I had to go with the team right now, I'd probably say Texas A&M.
Okay.
They're a team that I thought was pretty interesting that they were ranked where they were. When I go through and I look at what their schedule is this year, there is a world where they enter November no longer ranked in the top 10. I mean, they host Arizona State in week 2. They're on the road against LSU at the end of September. They're on the road against Missouri in the middle of October. And then to round out October, they're on the road against Alabama. There is a world where Texas A&M goes into the month of November no longer in the top 10 and fighting for a spot in the college football playoff. So they'd probably be my team right now that I would have pegged to drop out. And then to jump in, I mean, I hesitate to talk about this because of how much of a hot topic of conversation that they've been, especially in the Notre Dame sphere for the last 24 hours.
You're going to say USC.
If USC is the team that people believe them to be, let me insert this caveat. I don't think that they will be that team, but they will have the opportunity to. It's one thing for people like, oh, this team's going to be absolutely nasty, and then they have a schedule that looks like Penn State's.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, they could go 10-2, and we still wouldn't have an idea of what this team looks like.
Oh, they have a prove-it schedule.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about that. They have a prove-it schedule.
And that's where I'm at. I mean, before November, they play Oregon at home, Washington at home, Penn State on the road, Wisconsin on the road, and Ohio State at home. There's a world where I could see them, especially with other losses, like if they just hold serve and continue to win and teams around them continue to lose, they might find themselves on the doorstep of the top 10 before they even play a difficult opponent.
Sure.
So if they are who people believe them to be, they would have the opportunity. But is that something I'm willing to bet on? Absolutely not.
Right. I want to go back to my Ole Miss comment. And the reason that I said Ole Miss, number one, I'm not totally convinced in their head coach. But here's their schedule. They start off at a neutral site in Tennessee against Louisville. Okay. And they're ranked 21st. Well, I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing to say what Louisville is ranked at the moment, but they're not ranked at all in the coaches poll, but I still think that Louisville game is going to be tough. Then they've got LSU at home 2 weeks later, and then they go on the road to Florida the following week. And then they've got Texas at Texas on the 24th of October. Then they've got Auburn. Then they've got Georgia. Then they've got at Oklahoma. Like, that's a tough stretch. And so I just don't know that Ole Miss is going to be able to weather that storm. I don't know if they're going to have the offense to weather that storm. I just don't know. With that schedule, with everything that's going on at Ole Miss, I just don't know that they're a top 10 team.
I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. Going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds, Vince. And thankfully, we don't have that much longer to wait. Thank goodness. I haven't seen Karen pop in the chat yet, but I think we're 33 days away from Notre Dame.
She did. It was early, but it was 33. She put it in there.
Oh, shout out to Karen.
Love it.
Vince, it's time to start talking about Notre Dame and fall camp here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Fall camp starts this week, man, and thank goodness, because I'm starting to need football back in my life like I need oxygen to breathe, and we don't have to wait that much longer. Marcus Freeman's press conference starts here in about an hour and 15 or so minutes, so that's on docket. Fall camp starts on Thursday. Man, it's going to be a good one, but we wanted to sit down and take the time over the next 2 days. We're going to kind of be previewing fall camp. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some of the things that Freeman talked about in his press conference and previewing more of fall camp. Today, we wanted to talk about just big overarching questions on either side of the ball that Notre Dame has as a program as they're gearing up to get into a very important window of the offseason. Now, a couple of caveats that I want to insert here. These are not questions that we're posing like we secretly have the answer to and we're setting it up for a long explanation. These are legitimate questions that we're going to have to watch unfold. The other caveat is some of these questions that we have will not be answered in fall camp. The foundation to answering these questions will be laid during fall camp, but there are some things that we're just not going to know until the season starts. So keep that in mind when we have these questions. If I had answers to these questions, I would feel a lot more relaxed going into the season. Vince, I'm sure the same goes for you as well. But what we did is we broke this down into two segments. Right now, we're going to talk about the offense. Next segment, we're going to talk about the defense. And then we are wrapping up today's show with the daily mailbag. So feel free to get those questions in. It could be about the top 25. It could be our thoughts on it. It could be what your questions are about Notre Dame going into fall camp. So a bunch of different questions we can get in there for the mailbag. But what we did is we separated this into each position group. So for offense, we're going to be talking about quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line. But before we get into that, Vince, I do have one big overarching question for each position group. And the first one on offense, it's pretty simple. Who steps up to replace the production that they lost? Obviously, they entered this year without Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Malachi Fields, Eli Raridan, Will Pauling, Billy Schrouth, and Emil Wagner, all players who started, or in Jadarian Price's case, played starter-level snaps last year. It's a lot of production to lose, man.
It is a lot of production to lose. And, this is I feel like I'm on the set of Moneyball. They're not going to be able to replace those guys for the majority, like a one-on-one kind of a situation. they're going to have to replace him in the aggregate. And that's true of the running back situation. There's no Jeremiah Love on the roster. At least we're not aware that that's the case. Jeremiah Love is a generational running back. I think we can all agree on that. And so they're going to have to replace him with more than one guy. Now, if you have read our preview magazine, by the way, with an awesome interview with Mike Denbrock, he was asked that very question about, you got to replace Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and the production that they had, and how the heck are you going to do it? Well, he went into some detail about it, but he also said, and this is something that we've been saying for a while, he doesn't see the overall rushing production taking a hit. He thinks it's going to be pretty much on par with what it was last year. And I agree with him. I think there's a bunch of talent in that room. I think they're going to be able to spread the carries out a little bit. I think they're going to be able to be fresher, by the end of the game. I think they've got a bit of a different makeup of guys in there, so they can have some guys doing some different things and different roles, things of that nature. I really do think that the running game is going to be just fine. I don't think there's going to be a fall off there. And so the running game, I'm good with. I think they'll be able to replace. And again, I don't think it's going to be a 1-for-1 type of situation. It's going to be, as Brad Pitt likes to say, in the aggregate. I think that's how they're going to replace them. When it comes to those other guys, look, I think that you don't have an Eli Raridan, obviously, anymore. He wasn't a unicorn, and maybe Ian Premer ends up being that guy at some point. I don't think he's going to be put in the position to be that guy this year. But at the end of the day, and I know you know the answer to this, how many receiving touchdowns did Notre Dame get out of the tight end position last year? One. And just one. So I think you're going to be just fine in that regard. I think I think that, Cooper Flanagan is getting rave reviews going into fall camp. They love his blocking, but they also love what he's been doing in the pass game. I think you can bring in Ian Premer to be a guy that is going to, you're going to be able to ease him into the game. He doesn't need to be a starter. He doesn't need to be a dude. He can just go and just be a guy and be an effective guy in various, ways. And so I think you're going to be fine at tight end, and then offensive line as a whole. I think that the moves that they made in the offensive line, I think there is more talent overall as a group, and I think they're more athletic than they were last year. And so I think they're going to be just fine there as well. So those are my opinions on answering those questions. But at the end of the day, as you said in the open, we don't know the answers to any of those questions. It's going to be some time before we see what ends up happening.
I'm with you. I think the approach is definitely going to be by committee. When they talked about, Marcus Freeman talked about after Riley Mills and Howard Cross left. And he talked about, hey, you don't replace Riley Mills with one guy. You don't replace Howard Cross with one guy. You replace it with a bulk of production. For context, here's the amount of production that Notre Dame lost between the skilled players, Love, Price, Fields, Raridan, and Pauling last year. 406 combined touches, 3,906 yards of offense, and 45 touchdowns. They scored 70 as a team. So they lost well over 50% of the amount of touchdowns that were scored last year. Then once you factor in Billy Schrouth and Emil Wagner, they lost 3,437 snaps of experience just from 2025. So a lot to be replaced. Let's dive into the individual position groups. And Vince, where you have to start with this conversation is at quarterback. CJ Carr, somebody who was named as a Maxwell Award watch list. He was named to the Maxwell Award watch list. He is the preseason Heisman favorite on FanDuel to take home that heralded trophy. And so the biggest question that we have for him is he going to be able to take the next step? Is he going to be able to take strides in making advanced pre-snap reads? Something that Brian lays out beautifully in the IB preseason magazine, something that you guys definitely need to be a premium message board subscriber. Hop on in, check that out. It looks fantastic. But that's one of the things. Another piece of his game that can take another step is better outside accuracy on deep throws to the outside. He's great over the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
Is he able to be more accurate outside of the hashes on the numbers? That's another piece of this. That's going to be a big question for CJ Carr. Again, it won't be answered in practice. There will be signs, but until we get to Saturdays.
Not that we're going to be able to see.
Hey, man, I just work here, brother.
Sorry, I had to do it. Had to go there.
I understand. No, I understand.
Look, CJ Carr, of all the questions that we're going to ask about the offense, and frankly, the whole team in general, this is the one I probably feel the most confident about, just because of the makeup of CJ Carr and what a hard worker he is and what he's been able to do in the offseason and what we've seen from him when we're at practice and just the preparation and all of those kinds of different things. I feel very confident he's going to be able to do those things. But like you said, we're not going to know right away. I mean, are we really going to find out against Rice if, CJ Carr has taken that next step? No, because any one of the quarterbacks on the roster can probably do what they need to do to defeat Rice. And I don't want to disparage anybody on the schedule or anything like that. But if CJ Carr is exactly who he was last year, they're going to be 6-0 going into Game 7. They just will be.
Agreed, 100%. Like you run the risk of if you make every conclusion off of the lesser opponents on the schedule, you run into the issue that you had in 2023. Right. Sam Hartman and that offense lit the world on fire against Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan, NC State, and then what happened when Ohio State came to town? That passing offense looked a heck of a lot different than what it did. Yep. So I agree with you. This question might not be answered until they travel out to Provo and play BYU on October 17th. And then you could even further that and say we still might not even know until they host Miami on November 7th. So a lot of these questions are going to be an ongoing evaluation over the course of the season. It's not just at the end of practice 20, whatever, at the end of fall camp, we're like, yep, he's ready to go. But there will be signs. One question, though, in the quarterback room, Vince, that will have to be answered, at least initially, by the end of fall camp, has somebody separated themselves in the quarterback 2 battle? That's going to draw a lot of attention. There will be a lot of articles written about it across the Notre Dame beat, which understandably so. It's a big position. Quarterback is a driver of a lot of success. But a major question is who starts to separate themselves in the QB2 battle. Teddy Gerard is now in the mix. He was a summer arrival. Can Blake Hebert and Noah Grubbs build off of what they did in the spring? Because here's where we're at, Vince, with the quarterback 2 battle. This is the one position on the team that I do not, you could also argue boundary corner, but I do not want to see the backup quarterback this season out of necessity. Notre Dame's up by 35 at halftime against Rice, and you want to throw in one of Hebert, Grubbs, or Gerard into the mix? Let's ride. I'd be a candidate for all 3 of them. But regardless of how we feel or whether we're Team Grubbs or Team Gerard or Team Hebert, because you know how people tend to separate themselves into those camps whenever there's a position battle going on, Notre Dame is going to have to name a number 2 quarterback going into Wisconsin.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think with the way Notre Dame has operated in the past, like once they name a number 2 quarterback, it's going to be that probably for the rest of the year. And we had this discussion. What was it? In 2024, if it was you had Riley Leonard obviously was the starter. You had Steve Angeli as number 2, and you had CJ Carr as number 3. We talked all the time, like, okay, if it's a spot start, if it is a Penn State situation like it was, Angeli's going to come in, he's going to be just fine. He's going to do everything you need him to do. If it was going to be like Riley Leonard went down in Game 5 and he's out for the season, what the heck is that going to look like? We all kind of decided like it's probably going to be CJ Carr. I think that's the guy that you put in there long term. We could be looking at a very similar situation at Notre Dame in 2026 when it comes to the backup quarterback. There is a talent discrepancy of the guys that are on the roster right now. Blake Hebert's been here the longest. He's been in the offense the longest. He is going to be the de facto number 2 going into fall camp as we approach it. Is he going to be Angeli-like and be the guy that they trust the most to go in for a spot start or oh my gosh, CJ Carr is in the tent, and they're checking for a concussion. Who do we put out there? It could be a Blake Hebert, right? Or do the 2 young guys in Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard, is their talent level enough to have them overtake Blake Hebert at this point? This is a huge, huge summer/fall camp for Blake Hebert, because if he gets passed up as the number 2 guy, his time at Notre Dame as a starting quarterback has come and gone. And that's just reality, right? even though there will be a competition moving forward and all of those things, like for the starting quarterback once CJ Carr decides to leave, whenever that is. So this is a big, big fall camp for all three of those guys. And whoever ends up as number 2 doesn't mean they're going to be number 1 next year, obviously. And I think that's an important piece to discuss here. But if you're going to put a true freshman at the number 2 spot, your true sophomore is probably out of the mix. I think that's just reality. If it's close, they go with Hebert. I think that's my take on it. So I'm very curious to see how this thing plays out. This is going to be a big time battle for the number 2 spot. Again, not going to dictate what happens next year for the most part. I still think if Hebert gets passed up to be the number 2, I just don't think he's going to be basically in the competition next year. That's going to be a tough hill to climb for him. If he can, that's awesome. That's my personal opinion. At the end of the day, my prediction is that Noah Grubbs is going to be the number 2, but I think Blake Hebert gets the first shot at it.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, here's the deal with the backup quarterback position, and it could be very close to what we saw, to your point, Vince, in 2024. I think in a pinch, Steve Angeli goes in, and we saw that in the Orange Bowl in 2024 when Riley Leonard went out. He was being evaluated for a concussion. And then Steve Angeli came in and led that field goal drive to put him in a 10-3 ball game before the end of the first half. But there was conversation around if Riley Leonard early on in the season was hurt for quite some time, do you make the decision to go to CJ Carr early? Obviously, we know how the rest of that season panned out. They never had to make that decision, and then Riley Leonard came healthy and so on and so forth. Could it be the same thing this year, where Blake Hebert is the quarterback because of his skill set and his abilities as a runner? Is he the quarterback that comes in and gets you out of games? Or, God forbid, if something happens to CJ long-term, do you then turn the keys over to a Noah Grubbs or a Teddy Girard to finish out the season? I don't know the answer to those questions. That's why it's one of the ones that we're talking about here. But this is going to be a very pivotal offseason for a lot of the young quarterbacks on the roster. So it'll be very interesting. Turning gears now over to the running back room. This is a room that has a much different outlook going into fall camp than what it did in spring. Obviously, in the spring, you didn't have Kedron Young, who was still coming back from his ACL injury that he suffered, I believe, pre-fall camp. Going into the 2025 season, Aeneas Williams was not full go. We saw him in some drills and doing some 7-on-7 stuff, but he was never full contact. We also saw that in the Blue Gold game. Then we also didn't get to see Javian Osborne. I believe here in a little bit over an hour, under an hour, we're going to find out what Kedron Young's true availability is going to be for fall camp. Ideally, he's back to full strength, and this running back room is going to be at full strength. Same thing with Javian Osborne. But when I look at the running back room, the first question that I have with this unit is, what is the pecking order behind Aeneas Williams? I don't know how deep the running back rotation is going to go. But I am confident in saying that there will be a running back rotation. That's just the nature of the game now in college football. You don't see a whole lot of guys that are just the primary bell cow anymore on teams. I mean, even if you go and look at teams like Missouri last year, who they had a running back, Ahmed Hardy, and hopefully he's able to be healthy enough to play this season because last year it was rough. And he was, by and large, the bell cow for Missouri. He had 256 carries, 1,649 yards, 16 touchdowns. Jamal Roberts also still had 124 carries, 753 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So it was very like Jeremiah Love to Jadarian Price-esque of what they were doing at Missouri. So I'm confident in saying that there's going to be a running back rotation this year. I just don't know what that's going to look like. Can Aeneas Williams be pushed for the number 1 spot? There is also potential there as well. Then the second major question that I have in the running back room, and you guys kind of get where I'm coming from with this one, it's what is Kedron Young's health? He has a different skill set than everybody else in the room. When I go and I look at Notre Dame's roster, at least the one, hopefully there's one updated coming out soon because I'm still looking at spring numbers, mind you. But when I look at Notre Dame's roster, their running backs go 5'10", 210, that's Aeneas. Nolan James is 5'10", 212. Jonas Walton is 5'9", 214. And Javian Osborne is 5'9", 200. Kedron Young is 5'11", 234 pounds. And when he's healthy, he's arguably the most gifted runner in that room. As a ball carrier, Aeneas Williams, as of today, is probably the most all-round running back in that room, with obviously a lot of talent between Nolan James Jr., Jonas Walton, and Javian Osborne. So when I sit back and I look at what is at stake for Kedron Young this year, it's kind of like, in a way, what we talked about with Blake Hebert. Got to come back healthy and got to make a push, because from what we saw from Jonas Walton in the spring, those two freshman running backs aren't going to wait forever and twiddle their thumbs for their opportunity. They're going to come into fall camp ready to work and ready to put themselves in a position to get more snaps this year. So if Kedron Young is healthy and ready to go, that adds a level of dynamic ability to the running back room that they didn't have when he was healthy. He was making a push to be the third guy last year, and that room had Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I can only imagine what it's going to be this year if he's fully healthy. So I'll be very, very interested to see what happens around Kedron Young's health. But Vince said it at the start of the show. I'm not worried about the overall drop-off of the running back room. Yes, when you lose somebody like Jeremiah Love and you lose a talented player like Jadarian Price, there's always going to be questions around what the room is going to look like afterwards. It's not every day that you lose 2 first-round draft picks to the NFL in one offseason. Now, Notre Dame is not the first team that's had to overcome the loss of a first-round draft pick. I think back to Alabama in 2015, post Derrick Henry. I think of Penn State in 2017 after they lost Saquon Barkley. I think of Georgia after they lost James Cook and they lost, what's the other kid's name? Zamir White, called him Zeus. They were all able to replace it with a bulk of production. But when I look at the running back room, Vince, that's where I'm at. There are 2 major questions. Is anybody able to push Aeneas? What's the pecking order behind Aeneas? Then what's Kedron Young's overall health looking like?
I'm excited about Kedron Young. I think if he's healthy, that's going to be one heck of a 1-2 punch with Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young and somebody else. I think they will go, deeper than 2. I think there's going to be 3, maybe 4, depending on, the situation and things like that. I just think there's too much talent in that room to just completely ignore some people. But who is that going to be? I don't know. Is it going to be Nolan James Jr.? Is it going to be whoever? It doesn't even matter to me. I don't even care who it is. I just think they go deeper than 2. But man, I feel like I know what Aeneas Williams is going to be. Like, we've seen enough of him to know that what he's going to be. And I'm excited about it. I very much am. I think he brings, a different skill set to the table and, than we saw last year and some things like that. But I think the X factor is definitely going to be Kedron Young and what he's able to bring to the table. Because if he's 100% healthy, he and Aeneas Williams are just 2 completely different backs. And you can just do some fun stuff with both of those guys, maybe at the same time. We can all dream. But definitely in 11 personnel and 12, whatever. But I think Kedron Young is definitely an X factor here in a good way.
Yeah, they could have a true actual thunder and lightning duo.
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas I'm not upset at how it unfolded last year, but last year it was very much like lightning and lightninger, I guess. I don't know how you want to word that,
right.
But that's what it felt like last year. But you could have a true thunder and lightning duo this year if Kedron Young is healthy. But that's going to be a big question that we have. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what capacity they use him.
Yeah,
when fall camp opens up.
Yeah, 100%. We're getting word. I don't even want to put it out there. We'll find out at 2:45 where he's at from a health standpoint, because I honestly don't know. But on our depth chart, he's number 2. If he's healthy, I don't even know if it's going to be a 1-2 kind of a situation. I think it's going to be 1A, 1B, and that could vary from game to game.
Let's talk about the wide receiving room, Vince, because this has been a hot topic.
Hot topic, baby.
Hot topic of discussion so far this offseason. Some believe that they're not going to play a factor. Others believe they have to be 2019 LSU in order for Notre Dame to win a championship.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation somewhere in between. And here's the thing, Vince. All conversations are valid to varying degrees. Now, whether some of them are needed or not, we'll see. Whether some take it a step too far, potentially. But we're going to talk about the wide receiver room, and this is one, Vince, that enters this offseason with a lot of different questions. And where we have to start is the outlook at boundary. You lose Malachi Fields, a 6'4", 225-pound, experienced, big-bodied athlete in the boundary. Now, we've spent the last 2 months talking about the potential of this room. On paper, man, they got Cam Williams, who once that light bulb goes on, he's going to be impossible to keep up. You got Micah Gilbert, who's, putting together his best offseason in South Bend. And, he caught CJ Carr's first touchdown. You get Quincy Porter, a former 5-star recruit. And, The only reason why he didn't play in bulk last year is because, he was behind Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and yada, 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 yada. And all those are very true.
Yep.
It is now time to see that on the field and see who starts to separate themselves in the boundary, because they're going to need an answer there.
Yep.
Porter's going to be back at some point. Again, hate to sound like a broken record. We're going to get more light shed on that topic here in about an hour when Marcus Freeman and Rob Hunt or Lauren Landau give an update of his health. And then you have to look at, can Cam Williams or Micah Gilbert take advantage? If Micah Gilbert is not if Quincy Porter is not in a spot where he's able to be full go for the first week or two of fall camp, can one of those two junior wide receivers step up and take advantage of those opportunities? And then the final piece in the boundary conversation is, what do we see from Devin Fitzgerald this fall? I think Bubba Frazier is probably the only wide receiver that we're going to see play meaningful snaps this year, but I'm not willing to count out one of Caden Finley or Devin Fitzgerald. Does he get the opportunity based off of what he did in the spring to start going up against Leonard Moore and Kari Adams and Dallas Golden and DJ McKinney and Christian Gray? Will he earn some of those opportunities?
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see what they do with the freshman class there as well. But Vince, going into fall camp, the boundary receiver position is wide open.
Oh, it couldn't be more wide open. And I do hope, and based on some of the comments of Mike Denbrock, I think he's going to be like, look, force me to play you. You know what I mean? Like, when we've talked about that with the offensive line at times, it's like, force me to play you. And it's show me time at the wide receiver position. There's no there's no debate that there's talent there. None. There's no debate that there's talent there. Who's going to be the most consistent? Who's going to make plays? Who's going to get those 50-50 balls? Like, that's what I want specifically out of the boundary position. And that's what we need to see. And that's what the coaching staff needs to see. They may have a better idea of who the boundary receiver is going to be right now. And as you mentioned, we're going to get a better idea of what the injury situation looks like once Rob Hunt talks at the press conference. But it's wide open, man. It is absolutely wide open. I will say this. I don't think Quincy Porter is going to be 100% go, based on what Marcus Freeman has said over the last month, which is disappointing. But that leaves the door even more wide open at the boundary. I find that to be fascinating. This is not a question in a negative way for me. This is a question in a positive way, because every guy that you just talked about has an opportunity to prove themselves and get their butt on the field. There's no, in my opinion, there's going to be no excuse. Well, I'm not playing because of this, or I'm not playing because of this. Oh man, you got every opportunity to go out and play right now. And if you go out and you play against these DBs, you're going to play on Saturday. And that's the exciting part to me. I'm fired up about the boundary.
That's the biggest piece. Anybody that earns the spot, I truly believe that it'll be earned. If you're making plays against this secondary, that's not an accident in my eyes. And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they can do, but not the only questions that we have in the wide receiver room. Another piece of this is the depth. Who steps up in the depth? Notre Dame is in a position where, and I'm not going to spoil anything because it is in the magazine, but one of my favorite quotes from Mike Denbrock was talking about, essentially, to give you the Cliff Notes version, the rotation can go as deep as it needs to be if people earn a spot. That gets juiced because they understand. They know they don't need us here at Irish Breakdown to talk about how you can't have Jordan Faison and Malachi Fields playing 65 snaps against Purdue. They know that.
Right.
They don't need us to tell them that. Right. Now, having said that, that can't be the position that they're in. In the last 2 months, we've talked about, man, you got Elijah Burris and Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert and Logan Saldate and Bubba Frazier and Braden Robinson and Devin Fitzgerald and Caden Finley. And so when you look at the roster on paper, it sounds great. Now it's time that they all have to go through and step up. Now it's time to who forces the issue, because now we've gotten through May, June, July, the months of speculation, and now I'm excited to see if anybody in the depth can make a push. If a lot of the things that we projected start to come to fruition, if Elijah Burris can be the player that we believe that he can be, if Cam Williams starts to unlock his potential, if Micah Gilbert remains healthy and consistently makes a push, if the Ohio State transfers are everything that we're hoped that they're going to be, all of those things all encompassing, I'm very much looking forward to seeing in fall camp, Vince. But the depth in the room on paper, it's outstanding. Now I just hope it translates to the practice field and then obviously Saturdays when fall gets here.
Yeah, 100%. Again, positive question mark for me. We saw the young guys. We saw some of them ball out at times in the spring. At least those are the videos that we were receiving, and we saw them doing the blue gold game. And so I'm excited about these young guys. Notre Dame has done a great job, bringing in young guys. Whether it's recruiting or the portal. Thank you, Ohio State. And so, but now's the time where they need to show up. And look, you can get on the field as a freshman, but you got to prove that you can do it, and you got to do it on a consistent basis. So the wide receiver room, when we go to practice on Thursday, obviously a lot of eyes are on quarterbacks and things like that. I think more eyes should be on the wide receivers and who's receiving those balls and what that looks like. And I'm sure that they will be.
Goes back to that margin for error that we were talking about, Vince. Notre Dame is no longer in a spot where if player A or player B don't emerge, this room is in trouble. Having said that, they still need players E, F, and G to also all step up for it to be a good and productive room this year. Final question in the wide receiver room. You know where we're going with this one, Vince.
I do.
Can Jaden Greathouse stay healthy? Remain healthy? Here's my, concern versus the upside. When he was coming out of winter, we heard nothing but this has been a great winter for Jaden Greathouse. He's back. He's bought in. He's ready to get to work. And then he misses the entire spring.
Right.
And now we're hearing the same things of, man, he's had a great summer. This is the best he's looked since he's been at Notre Dame. This is fantastic. Jaden Greathouse is ready to go on a monster tear. Is he going to be able to stay healthy in fall camp? That is step number one.
Yep.
Because it's going to be extremely hard for CJ Carr to build any chemistry with Jaden Greathouse if he's not on the field. That's very, very – you could spend hours in the film room together. You can hang out after practice every single day. But if you're not on the field able to build chemistry with each other, that puts you in a handicap. Now, I think he's at the point now where he has the ability to stay healthy. Hamstring injuries are tough to come back from. But as long as he put in the work necessary over the summer, sounds like all signs are pointing into this being a really strong fall camp for Jaden Greathouse. He's going to continue building that. But I do always have to insert that caveat, because until I see him back out healthy consistently, because for the last calendar year, that's been a major issue for him. But if he's able to stay healthy, that truly unlocks the ceiling of what this wide receiving core can be. Jaden Greathouse is going to have to stay healthy, Vince.
He is, and he's an important piece of this. Now, can they be successful if he's not healthy and he doesn't play a single down all season? Yes, they can be. But they're going to be even better if he can. That's the thing. And everybody always remembers what he did in the playoff and everything else. He was good before then, too. And then he was pretty much injured all of last year. And so I just – people have obviously – they've written off Jaden Greathouse, and that's fine. To your own peril, if you want to write off Jaden Greathouse, that's totally fine. And maybe his injury is going to prevent him from ever being anything at Notre Dame, post 2024. Maybe that's the case. But that's what we're going to see in fall, and that's what we're going to see at the beginning of the year. And I think there's enough talent in the room that if he cannot answer the bell, both from a physical standpoint and from a production standpoint, he's going to get passed up. And that's what happens when you have such talent in the room. He's going to get passed up. That's cool. I as much as I like Jaden Greathouse, and I think he's got a boatload of talent. I think he's a good leader. I think he's all of those things. At the end of the day, you need to produce on Saturdays. And if you're not producing on Saturdays, then you can still be a good person off the field, but I want the better player on the field. So this is an opportunity for him. We wrote about him a bunch in the magazine. This is an opportunity for Jaden Greathouse. This is probably his last opportunity to show up and show out at Notre Dame. Can he? I think he can. Will he? That's the question. And if he doesn't, it doesn't mean the doom of the wide receiver room. I think that's the biggest key to this whole thing. They're a better room if he's playing at his level, or the level that he's capable of, but they don't need it to happen.
I think both things can be true, Vince. When I think about the enigma that is Jaden Greathouse, I think maybe conundrum is the better word. But when I think about Jaden Greathouse, two things can be true. One, last year, with him catching a grand total of 4 passes and missing 8 games of the regular season, Notre Dame had a record-setting offense. They set records, modern-day records in points per game, yards per play, and CJ Carr set the modern-day program record for passer rating. And there are some people that are willing to use that and say they don't need Jaden Greathouse because of all of those stats that I listed off. Here's the flip side of that coin. Imagine how much better they're going to be when he's back healthy. You know what I mean? Like, that's a conversation that we have to start having around Jaden Greathouse. I just got to see him stay healthy. If he's healthy, he's going to produce. That's been his one handicap. I have no question about his skill, his football IQ, his contested catch ability, his ability to score touchdowns, his ability to make plays after the catch, because I've seen it all. Now I just want to see it consistently on a week-to-week basis. I don't want to be sitting in October and November talking about, yeah, but you remember that one playoff game, that one time, that one game. I want to be like, yeah, look what he did last week.
Right, exactly.
That's where I'm at with him. I'm with you completely. Yep. Let's talk about the tight ends. This one's relatively quick. A couple of questions here coming out of the tight end room, but one is overarching. First and foremost, is somebody able to emerge as a pass-catching threat? Now, we're going to start seeing the foundation laid to the answer to this question of how much they're involved in pass game concepts and how much CJ Carr is targeting one of Cooper Flanagan, James Flanagan, Ian Premer, Ty Washington, Jack Larson, all those. But we wrote ad nauseum in the magazine about how much we believe that the run game is going to be exponentially better blocking-wise from the tight end room than it was last season. Who emerges as a pass catcher is a big question. And then the second question that we have, Vince, what's the pecking order behind Cooper Flanagan? During Marcus Freeman's sit-down, he spoke very highly of Cooper Flanagan, and it sounds like, reading the tea leaves here, it's kind of like who now elevates their game to his level. I think that's going to be a big question that'll have to be answered in fall camp as well.
Yeah, I think, Cooper Flanagan is going to be number one. I don't think he gets supplanted as the number one tight end this year. I just because of his ability in the blocking, from what we're hearing about him in the pass game, he's too much of a complete player. He's been doing it for too long. I believe he's going into his third year. He's not going to get supplanted as the number one. It's who is behind him and what does that look like? I think it's going to depend on who the number two is. If the number two is James Flanagan, for example, your 12 personnel is going to look like two attached, tight ends that are dominant in the run game, and that's what you get. Same thing probably with Ty Washington, if he's the number two, right? If Ian Premer ends up being the number two, well, 12 personnel might look a little bit different because you might be splitting out Ian Premer into the pass game, and what does that look like? And how often are you going to have him attached? And what does that look like? So I think figuring out who the number two tight end is really going to dictate a lot of what the offense is going to look like on a regular basis. I really do think that. And could it be a timeshare at number two? Maybe 12 personnel one game looks different than 12 personnel in another game. The best thing, and I mentioned this earlier, the best part about this whole situation is Notre Dame is not in a position where they need Ian Premer to be a dude in game number one. They don't. You can ease him into it, and then he can be a dude in the playoffs, or he can be a dude towards the end of the season, or he could be a dude against Miami. He doesn't need to be a dude against Wisconsin. He doesn't need to be a dude against Rice. Get his feet wet. It's still his first year of college football. He's not going to be here for 5 years if he is who we think he is. So get his feet wet. Let's see how he does. And if he balls out, he balls out. That's awesome. But I'm very confident in what Cooper Flanagan brings to the table. It's what that number two, and what does that look like, and how does that affect the offense?
Agreed. Whoever emerges alongside of him, we know that spot's going to be earned because of the depth of talent in that room. Yeah. It's not just going to be who was the lesser of insert other player here. That'll be earned, whether it's James Flanagan, Ty Washington, Ian Premer. I'm with you on all of it, with you completely.
Yeah.
Let's round out this conversation, Vince, on offense at least, with the offensive line. Now, as we know, some moves were made this offseason. They kicked Anthony Knapp inside to left guard. Will Black stepped in at left tackle, and Gerby Lambert was moved out to right tackle, paving the way for Sullivan Absher to go over to right guard. All signs – that was a major question that had to be answered going into spring, because I remember doing this exact same show with Brian. And we talked about, okay, are we going to see the lineup that we should see, or are we going to see Will Black at guard and Anthony Knapp at left tackle? It wasn't just about getting the right 5 guys on the field. It was about getting them on the field in the right spot. Now, having said that, one of the 5 guys that is a part of this offensive line unit is Ashton Craig. The number one question that I have for the offensive line room as of right now is, what does Ashton Craig look like? He's coming off of his second significant knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
he has yet to play 12 games in a regular season. Yet he has yet to play 7 games in a regular season, let alone 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 games. I'll be very curious to see how he's handled in fall camp. What will he look like back in the rotation? Will there be a rotation? Is he going to be limited early? I know Ashton Craig is your boy, Vince. What do you think we could possibly see from him?
I think there are 2 players that I'm most interested to hear what Rob Hunt has to say. Ashton Craig and Kingston Viliamoasa. And we'll talk about defense here in a little while. But those are the 2 guys that I want to know where they're at in their comeback story, coming back from injury. If Ashton Craig is healthy, he's your center. He is an elite center. He can be an elite center. He's just been plagued by the injury bug, with his knee and everything else. And you hope that he can put together an entire season without getting injured. Look, there's a reason Pat Coogan went to IU. It wasn't to go be the starter. Oh, it was to go be the starter, but it wasn't because he didn't like Notre Dame or whatever. He wasn't going to start here because Ashton Craig is better. That's just a fact. It just is what it is. I'm very happy for Pat Coogan and what he was able to do at IU. He's an emotional leader. There's no doubt about it. But on the football field, Ashton Craig is a better player. So if he can be healthy, he's a difference maker on this offensive line, in my opinion. He's the anchor. He's the middle guy. He's making calls. He's doing, he's doing all of those things. I'm a huge Ashton Craig fan. I really hope he's healthy going into the season. And if he is, he takes this offensive line to another level. That's where I'm at with Ashton Craig. If he's not healthy, the offensive line is going to be fine. I just think they have the ability to become elite if he's on the field.
I agree completely. The floor for the offensive line is still exceptionally high, whether we see Ashton Craig out there, Joe Otting out there, who started 6 games last year, if Cam Herron makes a push or Sullivan Garvin makes a push. I'm with you completely. Then the floor of the offensive line is exceptionally high. Ashton Craig, I think, helps dictate the ceiling. I'm with you there completely. But all chips are not just on the table for him. I also have a question about Anthony Knapp and Will Black, and if they're going to continue building their on-field chemistry. On paper, it looks fantastic that they're next to each other. Black at left tackle, Anthony Knapp at left guard. We saw, from a communication standpoint, Sullivan Absher, Gerby Lambert gelled in spring. It looked like they had been playing together for 2 years by how they were communicating with Joe, like handling stunts and blitzes and handling pass protection. Will Black and Anthony Knapp were getting there. Also, keep in mind that Gerby Lambert is now a junior and Sullivan Absher is a senior. Anthony Knapp is a junior. Will Black is a sophomore. And so I wasn't expecting them to be at that level, but are they going to continue growing over the course of fall camp? Because I would contend that, 1, they need to, obviously. But 2, what is that going to start to look like for them? I think Will Black, there's a lot resting on his shoulders this upcoming season, stepping in and being the left tackle in his first year in the starting lineup at Notre Dame. And so I'm interested to see how their chemistry continues to keep building. I think that's going to be a big piece of it. Started off strong in the spring. Are they going to be able to hit their stride in fall camp? I think that's going to be huge.
Oh, it's going to be massive. I think that Notre Dame has the added luxury, and it is a luxury, right? Because you've got your starting left tackle for the last 2 years moving inside, where if there was a fault in his game, it was when he was in space as a pass blocker. It was never about run blocking. It was never about being bull rushed or anything like that. It was about pass blocking on the edge. Well, that's not going to be an issue anymore. And he has 2 years of starting under his belt. And so you're going to bring in a guy like Will Black. It's essentially a rookie. He's a sophomore. Used to be a redshirt freshman, I guess, is what he would have been, right? But he's going to have all kinds of experience right to his right-hand side. And I don't think people understand how massive that is. Having a guy like Anthony Knapp sitting there who went through the same thing that Will Black is going to be going through, by the way, starting at left tackle for the first time at Notre Dame, that whole thing. And so having that piece there, having that communication there is going to be absolutely key. I'd love to see that relationship continue to grow, continue to mesh, because when it's all said and done, the talent level of those two guys being together could be better than the right side. And if that's the kind of competition we're talking about, right side versus left side and what side is better, and then you throw Ashton Craig in the center of my goodness, I think the sky's the limit for the offensive line. But I think you're spot on as far as that question is concerned. I think it's going to be very interesting to see. But it's another question I feel pretty good about, I think, at the end of the day.
The final piece for the offensive line, Vince, and we'll round out the offensive questions conversation with this. Who steps up in the two deep to join Matty Augustine and Joe Otting? Here's where Notre Dame is at with the offensive line. This is the deepest and most talented offensive line room, at least of Marcus Freeman's tenure and of Joe Rudolph's tenure. Every player in that room now, with the exception of, I believe, Ashton Craig, have only played for Joe Rudolph and Marcus Freeman. Coached by. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so when I start looking at the outlook of this room, the starting lineup is exceptional. Notre Dame has also not finished a regular season since 2017 where the starting lineup remained the same from game 1 to game 12 or 13. So at some point, somebody's going to have to be called upon. As of today, the two next men in are Joe Otting and Matty Augustine.
Yep.
That's
agreed.
a good place to start. But who in fall camp rises to the occasion and joins them in the ranks of we can also be the next man in? If from left to right, outside of center, Matty Augustine is your answer at 4 different positions, that might work if you have one injury. But we've seen multiple injuries.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Especially the last 2 years. You know, you have Charles Jagasaw go out in fall camp in 2024, and then you have Rocco Spindler get injured at one point in time, and then you have Billy Schroth go out for 4 games, and then Ashton Craig at center gets out for the rest of the year. And then this past season, Billy Schroth gets injured, and then he misses the rest of the season. Ashton Craig misses the season again. Anthony Knapp went out for a play. Matty Augustine's only one guy. And so somebody else is going to have to step up along with him. We've obviously seen Joe Otting and what he can do in a backup center role. But what happens what if Anthony Knapp gets hurt this season? Do they put in Joe Otting at left guard and leave Ashton Craig at center? Do they kick Craig over to left guard and put Joe Otting in at center? Yeah. Or is it just going to be Joe Otting's the backup center and Matty Augustine, as of today, is the next man in at every other spot?
I honestly, I think as of today, August 4th, and that obviously this can change, and that's why it's a question. That's why we're talking about it. I think as of today, if something happened, I think you're spot on. I think Matty Augustine is the next man in at guard and tackle, and I think Otting is the next man in at center. I just think that's the way they would probably go with it. But that's what fall camp is for. There's so much talent in that room too. And I know it sounds like a broken record when we say that, but there is a bunch of talent in the offensive line room. Some guys need to step up, and that doesn't mean battling to be the starter. It means battling to be the number 2. And that's huge. Battling to be the number 2 is huge. And they need that. They need that on the offensive line. And so I think there's going to be, not unlike quarterback, I think there's going to be some good battles for the number 2 to be on the depth chart at offensive line. I really do.
I think that's a great point. Absolute great point. I'll be very curious to see who else steps up and answers the bell. Is Styles Prescott going to lock down the number 2 left tackle spot, or does he continue to get pushed by Grayson McHugh?
Sure.
Devin Houston right now, I would imagine, is the slated number 2 left guard. Does he get pushed by Peter Jones? Do we see anything from Ben Nichols? What about at right guard? Does Christopher Tarrant continue to lock that down? Is he able to stay healthy? Do we see a push from Tyler Merrill? Does Charles Jagasaw come back at some point in time? Don't want to open up that whole can of worms, but it is a possibility. And then what do we continue to see from guys like Owen Strebig?
Sure.
Is Owen Strebig somebody that's ready to where if he had to play in a game today, would he be ready? Or by September 6th or September 12th, so on and so forth. But Vince, I can confidently say that with all the questions that we just listed off, we went for about 45 minutes just on the offense. And it might sound like, you guys just spent the last 2 months talking up about how good this team was, and yet you had a laundry list of questions. Well, guys, the laundry list of questions was who steps up at number 2 offensive line?
Right. Which
one of the 3 talented boundary receivers wins the job? Who is in the rotation with Aeneas Williams? Can CJ Carr go from being great to elite? Those are the questions that I would much rather pose than, is wide receiver going to be good?
Right.
Is offensive line going to be serviceable? And so that's where we're at with this one. Nobody put it in the chat. That's just something I wanted to throw out there. These are the conversations that we start to have when your team is fighting to become an elite championship contender. These are the questions that they have to answer, because at this point last year, Indiana had questions, Miami had questions going into 2024, Ohio State had questions, Notre Dame had questions. So this is what I love. And I would much rather, Raymond Harton, said it perfectly. Said, I think it's more questions than concerns. And I think that's perfectly
accurate. These are questions that are going to be fun to find out the answers to, not ones that I'm not sleeping well tonight over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. Vince, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball here in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We just got done talking about the questions on the offensive side of the ball going into fall camp. There's a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball too. This has been a very, very hot topic of discussion so far this offseason. And like with anything, people separate themselves into camps. But the defense brings back the bulk of its production from last year. But you and I and Brian and Sean Stiers and everybody affiliated with Irish Breakdown believe that there's another level that this defense can get to. The biggest question is, which version are we going to see? Now, you and I are under the impression that we are going to see the final 8-game version of this defense. There is a clear-cut sample size of now that Chris Ash understands what his personnel is, and he knows how to use his guys properly. We saw that get ramped up. This isn't a conversation of, but after he was, shoved in a locker by this coach and he started doing this. This is not the question. That's not the conversation that we're having. What we know is after Chris Ash understood his personnel and ran the system that is tailored to his players, not the other way around, asking his players to tailor to his system, we saw a completely different defense last year, Vince. And you and I are under the impression that we're going to be able to see that defense a little bit more this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's unfortunate the way everything went down, obviously, last year. And I'm willing to put that one in the back seat at this point and move forward. And as long as he's coaching these guys the way he coached them the last 9.5 games, then I'm good. And I think this defense isn't going to miss a beat. And, whether it's the company line, whether he actually believes what he says or whatever the case may be, I don't care. I really don't. It doesn't matter to me anymore. That was a year ago. I care about 2026. Look, here's what I know for a fact. Notre Dame is not going to win the 2025 national championship. I've got that one down. That's not going to happen. They have a chance to win the 2026 national championship. And that's what I want everybody to focus on. And that's what Chris Ash is focusing on. And as long as he picks up where I don't even need him to be anything more special than he was, the last 9 games of the season. Just do what you were doing and let's roll. Like, that's all I need. And if that happens, defense is going to be just fine, if not elite.
I hate to derail you, Vince, because you were just spitting, but I forgot what year it was. And I was like, what do you mean they're not going to win the 25 national? I was like, what are you doing, dude? I was like, goodness gracious. Yeah, it's 26. That's on me. At first I was like, okay, Vince. Well, that'll do it for us here today.
Yeah, that's right. Woo, we're done.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, man, I'm with you completely. 25 season is now in the past. All attention has to be on the 2026 season. Now, the big picture question that I have to see on defense is, will Ash lean into the aggressiveness that made this defense so dominant in the final 8 games? Here's what made the start of last season so confusing. We saw things schematically in fall camp in 2025 that we did not see in the early window of the regular season. That's what made it so confusing to me. So is it going to be a lesson learned type of deal going into this season? For context, here's how much better, because it's easy to say, like, yes, they started their 10-game win streak and the defense looked better on paper, all those different things. But for context, in the first 4 games of the regular season last year, Notre Dame allowed 26.8 points per game in the first 4 games. And yes, people want to say, well, yeah, you played Miami and Texas A&M, the 2 best offenses that you faced. Agreed. USC did have the Blitnikoff Award winner. I don't know if I'm willing to put their offense up on a pedestal, but they did have that. So it's not like the back end of their schedule was void of talent.
Sure.
They also allowed 24 first half points to Purdue.
Right.
Which, with all due respect to Purdue, their offense was not on the same level as Texas A&M and Miami. Didn't help that Notre Dame's defense made Texas A&M's Miami off, or that Notre Dame's defense made Texas A&M's offense look like 2019 LSU for a point of time. That also didn't help. But For context, in their first 4 games, they allowed 26.8 points per game. In the final 8 games, they cut that by more than half. And they allowed 12.5 points per game in their final 8 games. That is the defense that we have to see. The linebackers were more productive in the final 6 games. The D-line was let loose in the final 8 games, and the secondary was significantly more effective because of that in the final 8 games. So if Chris Ash is able to answer that question and lean into the aggressiveness that made this defense so dominant in the latter half of the season, this team is going to be very, very difficult to beat. Now, having said that, we still need to see it. That question for me will not be answered until we get to October 17th, November 7th, and November 21st. I don't know how that's going to be for you, but there's nothing that I'm going to see in fall camp either way where I'm going to be like, yep, this is how the defense is going to be.
No, I completely agree because we get full access on Thursday, which is awesome. I'm, really looking forward to that. But they're not wearing pads; they're wearing helmets and T-shirts and shorts, and so the aggressiveness of the defense will be a complete who knows. And then after that, it's just not going to be the case. So we're not going to get enough viewings of practice to be able to tell you before game 1 what this defense is going to look like. We're just not going to be able to tell you outside of sources and, things of that nature, which of course all of that exists and we'll use it and we'll let you guys know. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to see it with our own eyes until we all see it together up in Green Bay. Like that's the first opportunity we're going to have to see what this defense is going to do. Are they going to unleash everything in game 1 and game 2 and 3 and 4? I hope so. Honestly, let them play. That's my biggest thing. Just let the defense go out and play. Don't pull the old, we're going to save stuff for Miami. We're going to save stuff for BYU and blah, 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 blah. To a degree, I get it. To a degree. But you still have to have an identity and a personality that they clearly had in the second half of last year. That's what I want to see. And I want to see it on day 1. I want to see it in that first weekend of September, that Sunday night in Green Bay against Wisconsin. It's a faceless opponent. Just go take care of business. Defensively, be aggressive. Be you. Be your identity. If we see that in game 1, I'll be like, let's roll.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we're not going to have to wait long, to your point. One of the principles of this defense is being able to stop the run. And with Wisconsin having Colton Joseph and Abu Sama and Brian Jackson and a host of different running backs and talented, skilled players back, we aren't going to have to wait long to see it. Right now, game 1, as of today on FanDuel, they are projected as 20 and a half point favorites, Very interested to see how that game plays out, Vince. Another reminder that we got to sit down and kind of get the season 2 of the spread option on the calendar as well. That's a
good call. Have to sit down and talk about that one.
Yeah, man, it's going to be sick. Very, very excited to see it. But let's dive into some of the questions on the defensive side of the ball, position group specific. So like the offense, we're splitting this up into 5 different position groups. We're going defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. And we're going to start up front, and we're going to talk about the defensive end room. Garnered a lot of attention this offseason between Boubacar Traore coming back, Keon Keeley, transfers back to Notre Dame after originally being committed there in 2023. But the question that I have first and foremost is around Bryce Young. Will he be able to build off of his spring performance? Vince, we saw it. His flashes became more consistent in the spring, but he still has a ways to go. We believe that his breakout will be the catalyst of this Notre Dame defensive line. How much of groundwork does he lay for that over fall camp? Because I'm with you. He doesn't have to be the second coming of Isaiah Foskey against Wisconsin. But does he start laying the groundwork for that in fall camp? Be very interested to see.
Absolutely. Look, and we know that there's young talent at the defensive end, and I'm not saying they're going to necessarily overtake Bryce Young as the starter. I mean, he's a returning starter. He's got all the tools, all of the things. But at the same time, he could get some snaps taken away by some of these younger guys if he doesn't become that guy that we think that he can be. And again, that's not necessarily a terrible thing, but this is his opportunity. This is his time to kind of take that next step. Look, he got thrust in as a freshman, made some great plays on special teams, he was great. Not much was expected, right? Then you move into next year. There was growth. There was definitely growth there, kind of plateaued a little bit. but then we saw growth in the spring as well. And so I think things are moving in the right direction for him, but this is his season to break out. This is his time to attempt to etch his name next to his dad's in Notre Dame football. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is his opportunity to do that. And I think he's got all the boxes checked to do that. Now it's time to prove it. Now it's time to show it.
Couldn't agree with you more. Let's also talk about the depth in the defensive end room. Again, we've had a lot of conversations today around, what we've talked about the last couple months and how everything looks great on paper. And now, this week is going to be our first time to see it out on the field. I love being able to sit here and talk about on paper Keon Keeley and Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade and Logan Thomas and Joe Reif and Dom Hulak. But a major question that I have is who steps up in the 2 deep. All signs are pointing into the direction of guys like Keon Keeley and Rodney Dunham really being able to make a push. But defensive end is another position that has had its fair share of injuries over the year at Notre Dame. Ideally, you're able to play more of a rotation, especially considering what your first 6 games look like. In a perfect world, we don't see a whole lot of Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore against Rice in the second half. Ideally, we don't see them a lot against Stanford in the second half or a lot against North Carolina in the fourth quarter. And so I think that's going to pave the way for guys like Keon Keeley and Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade and Logan Thomas to step up in the depth. But it's going to be needed. If they're able to do that, then I'm going to feel a lot better about the defensive end depth. But they don't want to be in a position where there's a significant drop-off after Boubacar and Bryce, because that's going to handicap this defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, the 2 deep is very interesting to me. I think there's there's just some intriguing guys, younger guys, obviously, and everybody loves the new toy. Everybody loves the new piece of the puzzle, right? And I think Notre Dame is right there. They've got the young guys, and these young guys could take reps away from these older guys, and this could be a situation where this is the last opportunity for some of these older guys, because the younger guys come and make plays and just force themselves onto the field. That's why I think the 2 deep is going to be very interesting here. I think it's going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be very similar. I'm trying to think of an offensive position where it's very similar. It could be very similar to wide receiver. Some young guys could push themselves in and make themselves known and force themselves onto the field. That's what we're hoping for at wide receiver. And we could see it potentially at defensive end. And, reason being is they go deeper. The offensive line, you start with your 5, you end with your 5, defensive end, you rotate. Wide receiver, you rotate. So I'm excited to see what the defensive ends can do, especially as you move down the depth chart a little bit, because I think there's a bunch of talent there and some guys that I think are going to turn some heads.
Keon Keeley is the guy that I'm looking forward to seeing the most, I think, in fall camp. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see Bryce Young and I'm excited to see Boubacar. But it was really cool when the news was announced that Keon Keeley was going to come to Notre Dame. He was a big part of the 23 recruiting cycle, good friends with Drake Bowen, and it was cool to see that come full circle. Now that honeymoon phase of his announcement being now 8 months ago that he was coming back to Notre Dame via the transfer portal, now that honeymoon phase is over, I'm excited to see, okay, is he ready to take that jump? Now, kind of like how we talked about Bryce Young last year, I don't think Keon Keeley's massive all-star breakout is going to come until 2027, but there's a chance it happens this year. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him at fall camp. Let's kick it inside to the big boys on the interior. Vince, I'm not going to lie to you, man, and I'll kick this back over to you. I don't have a ton of questions about this unit. Like, there are things that I want to see, but my biggest question for them is just what the pecking order is. Do you see any other major questions there from that room?
Not only do I not see any other questions in that room, I would say that I don't care what the pecking order is, because I think there's enough talent there that you may see different starters week to week, depending on what they're going up against or depending on who's the hot hand or, whatever the question is. I think you've got, a bunch of talent there. Obviously, you got some guys from the portal that we're going to see, where they fall in the pecking order. You got guys coming back. Armel Mukum was in the portal. Now he's back. You've got Onye, who got a 6th year, which which is now officially unheard of because they're not doing those anymore. And so good thing he got that thing signed off before they made the 5-for-5 ruling. But at the same time, like, I think there's enough talent there, and I think there's enough differentiation of talent that you could see different starters week to week. I really do think that. Look, somebody's going to step up and be the starter more often than not, which I totally get, and that's totally fine. My point is, you may see a differentiation of snap counts based on what kind of offense they're going up against and who's got the hot hand and things like that. And I think there's enough talent in that defensive tackle room where you can get away with that, and you can do that, and you can throw different bullets at these offensive lines and still be effective, depending on what kind of defensive scheme you want to run at them that day, or even multiple schemes in one game. So I just think that it gives Charlie Partridge and Chris Ash, I think it gives them a lot of flexibility. And the pecking order is a question, but I think it's an intriguing question because I don't think that there's an answer right now.
The old differentiation. You are getting ready to go back to school. Look at you.
Just pulling out the $10 words.
Okay. I love that. No, in all seriousness, I am with you completely. My biggest question is the pecking order. I'm cool with any combination of players that they roll out there. I agree wholeheartedly that odds are somebody starts to separate and becomes the bell cow of majority snaps.
Right.
There's going to be a premier duo or a premier trio that we see against BYU, against Miami, against SMU, and that we see a lot in the postseason. But I'm cool with whatever that is, whether it's Onye Mukum or Gray and Brew, Onye and Brew. So there's a bunch of different things that they could do. You could tell me any one of those guys are the starting two duos. It's like, all right, let's roll.
Yeah, let's go.
It's game time. Let's strap on the pads.
Yep.
And so that's how I feel about the defensive tackle room. The only other question that I have for them in fall camp is, does anybody make a push? Of those guys that I mentioned, Jason Onye, Armel Mukum, Tion Gray, Francis Brew, what are they going to get from Elijah Hughes this year? He's going to play a factor. At one point in time, he was our most experienced defensive tackle on the roster, albeit it was for like 96 hours. But at one point in time, he was your most – we were staring down the barrel of, okay, they don't have a position coach. Jason Onye's gone. Gabe Rubio's gone. Donovan Heinisch had to retire due to injury. Jared Dawson's gone. Armel Mukum's in the portal. All right, Elijah Hughes, giddy up, brother, because we're going to need you this year. You know what I'm saying? And now he's able to be in a role where, like last year, he's able to come in and make his impact felt in a rotation. That is something that I absolutely love for him. I think that's where his skill set serves best. But are they going to get any sort of push from Cole Mullins? He's another player that I'm very excited to see this offseason. What do we see from Sean Sevillano, Davian Dixon, Christopher Burgess? Sure. Elijah Golden flashed in the spring. Was he able to put it all together and really have a strong fall camp? That's another thing. But really, Vince, my two questions, big picture for the D tackles, what's the rotation look like? And is there a push from players 5, 6, 7, 8? And that's a really good spot to be in when talking about the interior trenches.
100%. Again, it sounds a little broken record-ish, but there's a bunch of talent in that room, which, by the way, and I want everybody to appreciate this right now, us saying that there's a bunch of talent in the room has not been the case for a while at defensive tackle. And now that is becoming the norm. Thank you, Marcus Freeman and company.
And
it's obviously more than just him, but
agreed.
He gets the majority of the blame. He gets the majority of the credit. It's just
2 years ago we were like, well, I hope Riley Mills is that dude this year.
Yeah.
Or else,
100%.
The outlook of the room doesn't look the same. I'm with you completely. Let's talk about the linebackers. This was a very interesting room to talk about questions because they return everybody from last season.
Yeah.
And so look, we could talk about health because so many of them are coming off of it, but dude, you could talk about health with every position. Health could be a question at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, O-line, D-line, linebacker, secondary, kicker, long snapper, kickoff return man, Marcus Freeman's health, our health. But health is always a caveat that you have to insert.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go with health. And so when I started looking at the linebacker room, this is the first time the full unit has been together this offseason with a new position coach. Brian Jean-Marie walked in, and from Jump Street in spring, he didn't have Drake Bowen. He didn't have Kingston Viliamoasa. He had Madden Faramo in a limited capacity, which caused Jaden Osbury to kick over to Mike. He had Jalen Sneed still. He didn't have Kahanu Kia. He didn't have Jacoby Clapper. And so that is something I'm very interested to see. That's something I'm very interested to see how they start to mold together. You know, we can hear in press conferences all the time, he's been great with me in the film room. Sure. He's taken the time to get to know me as a person, not just as a player. Now it's time to see how he's gotten to know them as a player. How do you utilize that rotation? What does Brian Jean-Marie do now that he has the full disposal of this linebacker room at his disposal? I guess I couldn't think of a better word. I'm not in that school mode like Vince. I was trying to come up with a word as cool as differentiation, and I couldn't.
I love it. Look, here the linebackers are real simple. These are all guys that we know. These are guys that everybody knows. These are guys that have been extremely successful within this defense, and even more so in the second half of last year. And, you know, the only question is who's playing where and when. Like, that's really the only question mark. And, you know, are we going to see more of Madden Faramo this year? Are we going to, you know, when is KVA going to be back officially, fully, all the way ready to go? What does that look like? That's really the only question. The production of the linebacker room, no question there. The ferocity, the talent, no question there. I mean, we've been talking about the same group of linebackers, I feel like, for 3 years, more or less. And we're going to have a completely different conversation starting next year. But for this year going in, this may be the position group with the least amount of questions, to be honest with you. And that includes quarterback. You know, where FanDuel has the CJ Carr as the leading candidate to be the Heisman Trophy winner. I think there's less questions in the linebacker room than there are at any position on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just what's the rotation going to look like? I do think the one that I kind of just thought of with Jaden Osbury playing a lot of Mike.
Yep.
Do they use him more in that capacity this spring? Or does he just kind of go back to he's the will linebacker starting alongside Jaden Osbury or starting alongside Greg Bowen?
Yeah.
What does that start to look like? That's a question that I have. How much more of a capacity do we see of Madden Faramo? I think a lot of those things, too, we'll also talk about tomorrow, because I believe Brian and I are going to sit down and give like a full-on fall camp preview, something I'm looking forward to as well. But
yeah,
it's a lot of different pieces. Let's kick it back to the secondary, and we'll start with the cornerback room. And this one was fun to dive into. You know, they have the number one returning cornerback in the country, Leonard Moore. ESPN deemed him as the number one overall defender in college football. Not a whole lot of questions about our guy, Leonard Moore. However, the guy potentially starting opposite of him, DJ McKinney, it's a position that he's going to have to come in and earn. But it's our first look at DJ McKinney. You know, he's had a lot of expectations entering his final year of college football. I've seen some NFL draft analysts give him some first-round grades. Some consider him to be the heir apparent at field after Christian Gray got kicked to the inside. How does he look? Because the next time I see DJ McKinney on the practice field in a gold helmet will be the first time.
Correct.
That I see DJ McKinney on the field in a gold helmet. He's a player that I'm very fascinated to see.
And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see much of him to start off the fall camp because he's going to be look, all schools do this, not just Notre Dame. He wasn't around in the spring, and so he's going to be lower on the depth chart when things get started. And so who's running out there with the first team? I don't think it's going to be DJ McKinney. And he just has to earn his spot. It'll probably take a couple of days, couple of practices or whatever. But we're probably not going to see him running around with the first team on Thursday. That's just a guess. Because that's usually what they do with portal guys and guys that haven't been with the program, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, but overall, going into the season, he's penciled in as the starter at field, right? I mean, I think that's what everybody kind of anticipates. I think he's got the talent to do it. You know, coming off an injury, you know, I think is a thing. And so what does he look like? I hope his name is nowhere near the lips of Rob Hunt here in a couple of minutes. That would make me very distressed. But there's also talent in that room behind him. But they didn't bring him in to ride the bench. Like, that's not why he's here. And so I'm very excited to see what DJ McKinney brings to the table for sure.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to see him. Gives Notre Dame another long athletic option in the at field corner, but the position is going to have to be earned. I'm with you. But to your point, Vince, we're going to see that across the board. Like the number one team on offense and defense is not going to be what it's going to be throughout the duration of fall camp. Like I wholeheartedly expect the first team wide receiver core, especially if he's healthy. I'm wholeheartedly expecting the first team wide receiver core to be Micah Gilbert to the boundary, Jaden Greathouse in the slot, and Jordan Faison onto the field. That doesn't mean that is the starting lineup for Wisconsin.
Right. End of discussion. We're done.
Right. Like a lot's going to change, and I'm excited to see what that rotation turns into, especially in the secondary. Another question that I have about the corners is what type of push do we see from the 2025 and 2026 classes? One thing that Mike Mickens built a reputation on outside of being the best defensive backs coach in all of college football, one of the best in the business, is his ability to identify, develop young talent. And the 25 and 26 classes are certainly not devoid of that type of talent. Definitely not. What type of push do we see from Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary? It's going to be our first opportunity to see Kari Adams, hopefully, and then Aiden Pouncey. They could all push for a spot in the rotation. You know, I've said this about multiple position groups. Leonard Moore especially. I don't want to see Leonard Moore in the second half against Rice. I don't want to see Leonard Moore ideally any more against Purdue or Stanford or Michigan State than what we have to. But Notre Dame is also, I got to believe that Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash and Aaron Henry are not going to put somebody out there that's not able to play. And they have to have confidence for whoever they put out in the boundary. What type of push overall at corner are they going to get from the 25 and 26 classes? Dude, you and I were talking about it one day at practice. Dallas Golden was off to a heck of a start in spring before he got injured. Very much looking forward to him in fall camp as well.
He's the one that stands out of this group because we've actually seen him do it on a fairly regular basis when we've been at camp or when we've been at practice or whatever. I think he's going to legitimately push Christian Gray, and we're going to talk about him in a second. I think he's going to legitimately push Christian Gray in the slot. That's what I think. And you know, can he play corner? Of course. I think he can also play slot. I think he can. He's a very well-rounded individual, and these other guys are all super talented as well. And look, they're going to all be counted on next year when a lot of these guys are gone. And so again, we're going to be having a different conversation about the secondary next year than we are having this year, similar to the linebackers. And so that's why these guys need to start making a push now. It's very similar to the second string quarterback, right? This is your opportunity to be like, hey, don't forget about me. You know, I'm pushing for playing time not only this year but next year. And so this is when you have an opportunity to do that. And so, look, I think we can agree we probably know who the three guys that are going to run out there on September 6th. I think it's the 6th. Run out there on September 6th against Wisconsin. I think we can all pretty much agree that's going to be, you know, Moore, Gray, and McKinney. But what's that depth chart rounded out to look like? If these guys are really pushing these other three guys, are they going to get more playing time during the game? Is there going to be more of a rotation? Or are those three guys going to be stuck out there the majority of the game? You know, things like that. Those are the things that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Those are the question marks when it comes to corner. And I think there's a ton of talent there. And I don't think anybody's anointed the next one yet. And I think that's the fun part of it.
Agreed. And they're all going to have the opportunity to do it. Dallas Golden has the potential to make his impact felt across the board. One of the spots being at nickel. And that's another question that I have about this Notre Dame cornerback room. Is Gray starting to settle in at nickel? Christian Gray and the coaching staff, they made the decision to kick him inside to the slot this offseason. He got his feet wet in the spring. But fall camp is going to be our first opportunity to see what work was put in over the summer. Does he look more comfortable? Does he rotate in anywhere else? You know, so all of those things are going to be questions that I have about Christian Gray and what we're going to see from him coming down the road here. I mean, I'm really, really hoping that Christian Gray finds that home at nickel because I think his skill set projects the best there. He's better in tight coverage. You're going to get a lot of that in the nickel. Contrary to what some people think, he's a very physical tackler. It's just he's been injured. He's been battling injuries the last couple of seasons. If he's able to stay healthy, I really like how he projects at nickel. We could kind of get the best of both worlds, and that Thomas Harper was very physical at the point of attack around the line of scrimmage in 23. Jordan Clark, I thought, was exceptional in coverage in 2024 at nickel. We could get the best of both worlds with Christian Gray. 6 foot, 190-pound nickel. I think that would be great for him. But we get to see him in fall camp and seeing how he's really starting to adjust to that new position.
Yeah, he got a chance to get after it in the spring. There's obviously it's a new position. He's going to have to get things figured out. He's going to have to do some things to really solidify that position, but they're going to give him every opportunity to be successful there. And when he's at his best, he's one of the best. Bottom line, when he's at his best, he's one of the best. And you just hope to see that on a more consistent basis. And I think this is putting him in a position where he will be able to be that. He's not going to be sitting in a zone where he's not at his best. That's just not who he is. That's not his game. He's going to be able to play some press. He's going to be able to play some man. He's going to be able to get up in the grill. He's going to get physical. Those are all things that play up, like you said, that play up to his personality and the way he plays the game. And so it's going to be fun.
Let's round out the defensive conversation here, Vince, with the safety position. Similar to linebackers, I had some difficulty coming up with some questions about this group because they returned to Don Schuler, Briante Johnson, and Luke Talich. Their top three safeties from last year. They combined for what, 9 interceptions last year. Luke Talich had 3, Adon Schuler had 2, Briante had 4. So this is
pretty
a
average.
very – I know, man. Like they had a very, very productive season last year. So here's the 2 questions that I had with the safety group. First and foremost is who steps up in the depth.
Sure.
The top 3 are solidified. And honestly, I don't think Notre Dame is going to go to 4 safeties unless somebody forces the issue. Here's the caveat. They have the talent and the depth for somebody to force the issue between Joey O'Brien, who's a true freshman, one of the highest rated defensive players in the class on the IB big boards, and Ethan Long, who started to show his worth at the end of last season as a special teams player and throughout the spring this past season. Similar to Luke Talich, he kind of just always finds the football. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's in the couple of opportunities I've seen Ethan Long, he gets an interception. He had 2 interceptions on one drive against Syracuse on Senior Day, and then he had a pick in the Blue Gold game as well. He's another player I'm interested to see. But that's a big question that I have. Who steps up at depth and safety? They're going to need somebody to force the issue, but they do have the talent to force the issue. Then the other question that I have is how do they utilize Luke Talich, who's now going into his 4th year? I heard things about they're going to try him out at like that nickel rover type. Are we going to see any 3 safety sets? I'll be very interested to see where they move Luke Talich around this offseason.
Yeah, they want to get him on the field. They don't want him to just be a straight-up backup. I think they want to get him on the field. I think they're going to use him to rotate and keep those other guys healthy. Not that you don't want Luke Talich to be healthy, because I think he's going to be a force on special teams as well. But you want to get him on the field. You want his playmaking ability on the field. He's one of those guys on this roster that could start for 130 other teams in college football. That's just the way it is, right? And so they want him on the field. It's going to be very interesting how they use him and use his skill set and how they get creative trying to get him on the field. But anytime, you have an opportunity to get a guy who's 6'4", 204 pounds and has the experience of a 4th-year player like he has, you want to get him on the field, period. And they will. And that's going to be fascinating to watch. It's going to be the spot next to him that is the big question mark if they go 2-2, or if it's just kind of a 3-man rotation, which, look, they could be the best safety duo in the country, or trio, excuse me, if they just go with 3 and they rotate to 3. You're the best. Congratulations. But like you said, with Long and O'Brien, there's other talent there that could force the issue, like at wide receiver, like at corner, that could force the issue and get them onto the field. And if they do, it's what we like to call gravy, Trevor. It's gravy.
Kind of been in the mood to keep throwing some off-speed pitches to you. So another curveball coming your way.
Love it.
Now that we've kind of wrapped up all of the questions that we have in every position group, who is one player in each position group, and we can rattle this off rapid fire, that you're looking forward to the most seeing in fall camp?
Are we going offense as well or defense?
We'll go the whole thing, all 10 position groups we talked about today. We start off at quarterback and go from there.
Okay, here we go. Quarterback, Noah Grubbs for me.
Okay. All right, mine's Teddy Gerard.
Okay.
Just because we haven't seen him.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Running back, Kedron Young.
Yep, same page.
Okay. Gosh, wide receiver, there's so many different ones, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to go with Mylan Graham. I want to continue to see him develop because if he does, then he's going to be a bit of a difference maker at wide receiver.
This feels like such a lazy answer, but I'm going Jaden Greathouse.
Yes.
Strictly because I just want to see him out there.
Love it.
That's
Love
why.
it.
That's where I'm at. How about tight end?
Tight end, this is going to be the answer people are probably not anticipating, but I'm going with Cooper Flanagan. I want to see how he has taken his game to the next level in the passing game.
I love that. Yeah, I'm going to go with James Flanagan. I'll go with the other Flanagan.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot is riding on his abilities as a blocker this season. I'll be curious to see what impact he makes in the pass game. Very curious. What about offensive line, Vince?
This was a split decision between Will Black and Ashton Craig, but I'm going to go with my guy, Ashton Craig. I hope he's out there on day one, and I hope he's dominating.
I'm going to go with I'm very excited to see any of the 5 starters across the board. I'm going to go with Grayson McHugh.
Nice.
I think he has a legitimate shot to push for the backup left tackle job. I think Styles Prescott is a good football player. But Grayson McHugh came in the spring and showed, that's a 5-star guy. That's somebody that's going to be very hard. And now I don't know if he's going to end fall camp as the number 2 guy, but would it shock you in the slightest if we opened up the 2 deep that we get released every week for, games, and like by Stanford, it's like, Grayson McHugh's the left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Backup left tackle. Would that shock you at all?
No, it wouldn't shock me at all. No, not at all.
How about defensive end?
I'm taking the youth movement here, and I'm going Rodney Dunham. He was just he flashed so much in the spring, especially in the spring game. I'm excited about him.
I love it. I was going to go with him as well. To not be of the same, I'm going to go Bryce Young. Okay. Very interested to see what type of strides he made over the summer, how he looks physically, all of the tutelage under Charlie Partridge. What is that starting to look like? And so that's where I'm at there. How about defensive tackle?
I'm going Armel Mukam. Going into the portal, coming back out of the portal to come back. He's penciled in the 2 deep right now. Can he make a run for starting? We talked about different starters and different combinations and things, and I just want, this is a huge opportunity for him as a senior to make his mark at Notre Dame, and I want to see 2 8s get after it. Number 88 on the defensive line. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table.
Love it. Give me the vet. Give me Jason Onye, man.
Yeah, he was my second place one.
Yep. In 2024, we talked about how through the first 5 games, he was arguably their best defensive tackle. And then in 2025, we talked about how he was their best defensive tackle for the final 6 games. Can you put all that together? Can you put it together for a full season? That foundation starts in fall camp. I'm going with Jason Onye at defensive tackle. What about linebacker?
Look, I'm going with Drake Bowen. I'm sorry, probably a 2-time captain. Just being in charge of that defense, seeing him out there doing his thing, 3rd year, third year as the starter. I'm very excited to see what Drake Bowen does this year. He is the guy that you picture as a middle linebacker at Notre Dame. I love this guy. I love him as a player. I'm excited to see him in his senior year.
For a lot of similar reasons why I just said Jason Onye, defensive tackle, give me Jalen Sneed in the linebacker room. He just put together his most consistent spring, from playing assignment correct football, being physical at the point of attack, being able to blow up block destruction. I mean, I think all of those things are going to be huge. Obstruction, excuse me, not destruction. Jalen Sneed is going to be somebody that I have my eye on this spring, because if he can put it all together in this 5th year, I mean, I think he raises the overall floor of that linebacker room. Very excited to see him. What about corner? Bunch of different options here.
Well, it's Christian Gray for me, because I want this kid to succeed so badly. For him, for Notre Dame, all of the above. I just want to see him succeed so much that it's Christian Gray in the nickel. That's what I'm going to be watching.
Love it. I'm going Dallas Golden. I firmly believe he could be the catalyst in the secondary. If he emerges and Dallas Golden becomes a player that we think he's capable of being for 2026, I don't know if we're going to see 2027 version of Dallas Golden in 26. If we do, this conversation gets a lot more exciting. But Dallas Golden, we could see him make a push at field and at nickel. And if they're in the spot where they can spell one of DJ McKinney or Jaden Sanders or Christian Gray just whenever they want to,
Yeah.
Dude. With Dallas Golden,
It's massive.
It's such a different feel when considering a calendar year ago, if Devontae Smith was injured, Carson Hobbs steps in at nickel. Dallas Golden just has a higher ceiling than Carson Hobbs. He's a good football player. He's a good kid. But man, Dallas Golden just brings a different dynamic. What about safety?
This is where I'm going with the young gun. I want to see Joey O'Brien. I haven't seen him play really at all. And if he's the guy we think he is, this young phenom as a freshman, like I want to see him do his thing.
I got two answers at safety. One is Joey O'Brien because, dude, he's
right
in his first practice, albeit non-padded, just in helmets. I watched him lock up Mylan Graham and go step for step and live in his hip pocket in a one-on-one drill as a true freshman. That was exceptional. I want to see more of that in fall camp. My other answer, kind of a cop-out here, it's a Don Schuler. Not because I'm looking for anything that I haven't seen before. It's because I'm going to be looking for things that I have seen before. That dude's going to be ready to play ball, and I've been itching for football for quite some time. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do. But I'm with you, Vince. That was fun. Thank you for answering my other curveball question there.
Love it, man. I was a catcher growing up. I'm good. I catch curveballs all day.
Okay, there we go.
Let's go.
Love that. Vince, we're taking home today's show here in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel with a daily mailbag. You guys know the theme for daily mailbags. Ideally, questions are geared more towards the topics that we discussed today. So we talked about the coaches poll, top 25 preseason that was released before the show started today. We also talked about the questions that we had on offense and the questions that we had on defense about this program going into fall camp. So lots to choose from. If you want to get your submission answered, you can put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji prior to your submission. It lets us know to set that question aside. Super chats also get bumped up to the top. Doesn't look like we have any in there right now. So we're going to get started up at the top with our guy, Andrew Sokolowski.
All right. Assuming Faison and Greathouse lead the wide receiver room in production, who are the next two most productive? Do you think the answer is likely or not likely to change after fall camp?
I think it's going to be an ongoing evaluation here, Andrew. Notre Dame has a diverse skill set in the wide receiver room. So they very much could play a game. They could play a season where, hey, maybe today's the Quincy Porter game. Hey, today's the Mylan Graham game. Today's the Jaden Greathouse game. Today's the Jordan Faison game. That's what I love about the diversity and skill set. Now, first part of your question here, assuming it's Faison and Greathouse 1 and 2 at the top, the next two most productive, I would probably say would be one of Mylan Graham or as of today, Micah Gilbert, but especially the latter part of that answer is subject to change as fall camp goes along and Quincy Porter gets healthy. Let's see what we get from Cam Williams. Elijah Burris, dark horse to be in that conversation as well, Vince.
I think the answer is definitely going to change after fall camp, just based on Mike Denbrock's answer in the magazine and how he's looking for guys to step up and force themselves onto the field. We may have a couple of surprises as to who's getting some playing time come September 6th. ND Wine and Cheese, excluding Miami and BYU, can either Hebert or Grubbs go 10-0 against this schedule, assuming our line is intact?
I don't know. SMU is going to go ahead, Vince.
I was just going to say, can they? Yes. Would they? Probably not, is what I would say, because you're going to get Hebert's never taken a college snap. Grubbs is a true freshman. And also obviously has not taken a college snap. They're going to screw up at some point. Almost dropped a bad word. They're going to screw up at some point. And so do they have the ability to go 10-0 against the rest of the schedule? Absolutely. Will they? I'm going to go with no.
That's such a tough question to answer. I'm with you, Vince. Can they? Sure. Anything can happen. I think the supporting cast in South Bend is the best it's been in Marcus Freeman's tenure. One of the best and deepest it's been in quite some time. Having said that, one of the reasons why we're so confident about this season and Notre Dame's ability to run the table is because of CJ Carr. Exactly.
100%. Number 13.
And so I was about to say, I was like, yep, number 31. I'm with you. And
it's a problem with this mirroring thing. I gotta go.
No, I get it. I was like, I'm with you. Number 31, bro. I'm with you all the way. And so when I look at the potential, do they have the physical skill set to do it? Yeah, absolutely. But That's tough because there are tough games on the schedule before then. I mean, is it as tough as Miami and BYU? No. But SMU, you have to factor in. That's the toughest opponent that Notre Dame has had on senior day in God knows how long.
Yeah, 100%.
They're probably going to be ranked. There's an outside chance that they're undefeated going into that game. They could be 11-0 walking into that, or 10-0 going into that game.
Sure.
So we just don't know. So if it was a buy, sell, hold, I would sell it. But is it possible? Of course it is.
All right, from Idem Benami, will Notre Dame's O-line be solidified? The biggest question is, will Black? Not too overly worried about the other positions, obviously, due to lack of snaps.
Will they be solidified? I mean, as long as they stay healthy throughout camp, yes. One of my biggest concerns about Joe Rudolph in the spring was he going to have the patience to let Will Black stay out at left tackle and grow? Because last offseason it was, outside of Anthony Knapp, everybody's position was subject to change. Ashton Craig stayed at center, obviously. But I believe last spring, Ashton Craig was also working back from injury. Last spring was odd. We didn't see Emil Wagner a whole lot. We didn't see Ashton Craig because he was coming back from injury. We saw Charles Jagasaw quite a bit. We saw Anthony Knapp in spurts, but he was on that load management deal from playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, spring.
You guys remember at the end of the 24 season, I mean, it was they had 5 weeks until spring started or something crazy. So it was being a little bit hyperbolic. It was more than that. But yeah, my biggest question on the offensive line, though, is not Will Black. He's a talented player. He's going to have his lumps as a sophomore / redshirt freshman. Regardless of how we're classifying him, it's his first year in the starting lineup. There will be flashes of that's that 5-star Will Black that we remember coming out of high school. And then there's going to be others where it's yeah, okay, he's his first year in the starting lineup. My biggest question is Ashton Craig's health. We have yet to see him play more than 6 games in a regular season. And that's going to be a major question. Technically, we have yet to see him play in 6 complete games because he got injured in the 6th game. So he's played 5.5, really.
Right.
So
he started 12 games in 2 years.
Yep. Gerby Lambert now has as many career starts as Ashton Craig. And Gerby Lambert's first year in the starting lineup was last year, and Ashton Craig's first year in the starting lineup was 2023. That's where I'm at. He's my biggest question mark.
Yeah, I get that. I agree, too.
Along the same lines, USMA 87 talks injury bug.
My biggest question, can they avoid the injury bug? Then which Chris Ash defense will we see? And the perennial, will the wide receiver room step up? I feel like we've answered that question 117 times. Look, here's the thing about the injury bug. It's football. Guys are going to get injured. It just is what it is. Can you avoid massive amounts of injuries? That's the goal, obviously. In 2024, they had a ton of injuries and made it to the national championship game. If they didn't have those injuries, I think they win the national championship. That's the difference, right? So, somebody's going to get injured. Somebody's going to be out for the season. I don't know who that's going to be, but just count on it because it's football and it's a collision sport and guys get injured. So it's just the degree of the injury bug for me. I'm not worried about Chris Ash. I'm just not. And will the wide receiver room step up? I hope so.
I sure am hoping so. I'm with you completely. Injury bug is a part of the game. I'm hoping we see the second half Chris Ash. We're not going to know that until they start playing Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But hopefully we start to see signs in fall camp.
Trev Grassy Candles, which newcomer not getting the most hype are you interested in watching this season?
Oh, that is a good question.
As you're thinking about it, I'm gonna go down the obvious road for me, and I'm gonna go with Spencer Porath. He's getting nothing. Nobody's talking about the fact that he's really, really good. Everybody's always worried about the kicking game. Everybody's worried about the kicking game. Nobody's talking to him or talking about him in a positive way. And so that's where I'm going. I'm going Spencer Porath.
I'm going to go Jaden Sanders. I don't think enough people look, I said this in the spring. Everybody's talking about, just wait till this transfer from Colorado gets here. It's there's a transfer in from Michigan right now. And we saw Jaden Sanders start at boundary in the blue gold game. We saw him push for a spot in the rotation at nickel. And we also saw him rotate in at field. So he's kind of like that he is right now the Matty Augustine of the secondary. or at least in the cornerback room. I don't think he's getting enough attention, which I understand, right? Like when you're also in a room with Leonard Moore and Christian Gray, DJ McKinney does come in. You get Kari Adams, who's an exciting, new player. Aiden Pouncey's a 6'3" long corner. Like, yeah, I get why, but I'm excited to see what Jaden Sanders does. As a true freshman, he started 2 games last year for Michigan. I'm excited to see what he does.
From Justin Ply. We're going to go with it. How important will Notre Dame's current edge in roster retention be over the next 5 years or so? I believe that in the current age of college football, this would define a winning program.
I think it's going to be really important. I mean, it's hard for college coaches to formulate a roster and a game plan every single year when it's a revolving door at some places. I think they've done a really good job on the front end scouting players that are a fit at Notre Dame, that see the university for its potential, not just a stepping stone to get to the NFL. You can certainly get to the NFL at Notre Dame. I think that their recent track record has certainly shown that. But they've done a really good job on the recruiting trail of identifying players. Marcus Freeman talked about that in his sit down. He was like, look, sometimes you have to screen kids out. Maybe they'd be a great fit for your football program, but do they actually want to be at Notre Dame? Do they want to tap into the benefits that Notre Dame provides you past when you're done playing football? And I think they've done a really good job of finding players like that. And believe me, the reason why their retention is so high is because they're not throwing tens of millions of dollars at every kid that gets an offer from another school. I assure you that players like CJ Carr, Leonard Moore, Adon Schuler, Drake Bowen, Boubacar Traore got offers to go elsewhere, but their visions were bigger. And I think Notre Dame has done a fantastic job of that. So Justin, to answer your question, how important is it? It's very important.
It's crucially important. And with the Protect College Sports Act, they're talking about allowing more money to use on retention of players as opposed to, the portal of play, so college football sees it as important too, which I think is key. I would try to limit the movement.
Absolutely limit the movement.
From Justin, will CJ throw more balls across the middle of the field next year?
I think so. I mean, we saw him attack deep middle quite a bit. Again, I'm going to keep drawing reference back to this, and it's because we've spent a lot of time on it, and we love the product that it is now complete. Brian has a great graphic about this in the magazine. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. Go sign up. He breaks down CJ's accuracy on outside deep balls, in between the hashes, things like that. So I think he did a fantastic job last year over the middle deep. But to your point about backside digs and more routes over the middle of the field, yeah, I think we're going to see that. I think that's just natural progression for a quarterback going into year 2. Yeah, first year, you're looking to attack outside of the number or outside of the hashes. You're taking dump offs and stuff that you're throwing over the middle of the field is 20, 30, 40 yards downfield. So, yes, in short, Justin, I think you're going to see CJ throw more passes over the middle of the field this year. All right, got a bunch in here from Salty Virginia Peanuts.
No. All right, Salty. If a reporter asks you what gift you're getting your girlfriend or wife on her birthday, should you answer as somebody did? She does not need a gift. She has me. Is Zlatan Abramovich?
Yeah. In short, Salty, no, I would not answer the question like that. No, I am somebody who outkicked my coverage significantly. So, no. I'm not. I'm not Lauren's gift.
Nope. On Friday when we celebrate our 22nd wedding anniversary, that will not be my gift to her. She
it's your presents.
Yeah, that is not going to happen. Nope.
We get a football one in here from Salty as well.
All right. Which team is the most overrated in the coaches poll? Gosh, I closed it up. Oh no, I didn't. I'm gonna go ahead. If you got one, go ahead.
In the top 10, I'd probably say Texas A&M. Across the entire board of the rankings, I would probably say Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State was going to be mine across the entire rankings. And I kind of mentioned it before in my top 10. It's Ole Miss.
Flip side of the coin from Salty.
Who's the most underrated in the coaches poll?
Oh.
Well, we both think Notre Dame should be higher than 5, but I don't think that they're completely underrated. So.
No, saying with them coming in at 5, with us arguing they should be 3 or 4, I wouldn't count that as underrated.
Agreed. Completely agree.
I mean, a team that's not even in the rankings is Louisville. I think
Yeah.
Louisville has an
Yes.
argument to be somewhere in the top 25, and they didn't receive any votes. The fact that Clemson was put in the top 25 over Louisville, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, agreed. I think the fact that Missouri is in there over Louisville. Now, it's one spot. Louisville is technically the 26th team because they received 153 votes and Missouri got 158. So, like, they're kind of right next to each other. But the fact that Missouri is ranked ahead of Louisville is surprising to me as well.
Yep, agreed.
From J. Melvin, Trev, could we put Great House in the boundary with Faison and Graham at the slot and the Z and just have a bunch of shifty, fast wide receivers instead of a 6'3", 6'4" guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the boundary receiver doesn't have to be 6'4", 6'5" guys.
Correct.
We've
100%.
seen Mike Denbrock have success with a bunch of different wide receiver sets. I mean, sure, his boundary receiver at Notre Dame in 2025 was Malachi Fields, who's 6'4", 225. And when they had Brian Thomas Jr., I believe he was a 6'4" guy. We've also seen him at Notre Dame with a boundary receiver in Chris Brown. I mean, Notre Dame starting wide receiving core in 2015 was what? Amir Carlisle, Will Fuller, and Chris Brown. And Corey Robinson came off the bench and rotated in. He was 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". We also saw Torrey Hunter Jr. rotate in. He wasn't a 6'5" guy either. So, yeah, they absolutely could put Greathouse in the boundary. He's one of the best contested catch players in the country. And that's what you get a lot of targets in the boundary. So it could absolutely work. That is one piece, Jay Melvin, that I'm interested to see what Mike Denbrock does this year with the wide receiving core. With the diverse amount of talent, do they just put Jordan Faison onto the field and say, you're just the field guy? Or do we see him in the slot? Do we see Mylan Graham move around? Do we see Jaden Greathouse move around? Do we see Quincy Porter, Cam Williams, or Micah Gilbert move around? What role does Elijah Burris play? I think all those are viable options. But yes, in short, Jaden Greathouse could play the boundary.
Yeah, it could definitely happen. I mean, that's yes. The short answer to the question is yes. I think ideally in Mike Denbrock's eyes, he wants a bigger target in the boundary. That's his ideal offense. He's not always going to have the opportunity to have his ideal offense. And so he's going to have to adjust and adapt and figure out who the best guys on the field at those positions are going to be. And he'll do that. He's done it in the past, as you just mentioned. So, yes. But that's what he wants it to be. So he's going to give those guys every opportunity to be successful. Those guys that fit that 6'3", 6'4", 205-pound mold.
Unfortunately, there's only one of those guys on the roster. Quincy Porter's the only 6'4" guy.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
Multiple viable options. Cam Williams is 6'2", Micah Gilbert's 6'2", Devin Fitzgerald is 6'2", Jaden Greathouse is 6'1", but 215. A lot of different options.
From Steven, with the assumption that no major injuries to the key players, can this team bring back the memories of the 88 team? And how would you compare to that one?
Well, the eras are so different. Let's just start up at the top. How do you compare Tony Rice and CJ Carr? CJ Carr's not running the option.
They're completely like, if there was a quarterback line, there's Tony Rice way over here, and there's CJ Carr way over here when it comes to traits. They're both great leaders. They're both very dynamic, but they are completely different types of quarterbacks.
Right. I mean, it's the difficult comparisons don't just end there either. I mean, Chris Zorich was one of the best defensive players on that entire team. As a nose tackle, defensive tackle, nose tackle, he was 6'1", like 270. He is 6'5", 330 pounds. Like, that's just such a hard comparison. So, like, you could talk about, like, their team success. I don't know how they're going to be in the regular season because, I mean, obviously I'm not reciting this from watching it. It's from memory of listening to Brian talk about that 88 team so much. They're not going to be tested in the regular season the amount that the 88 team was tested in the regular season. They're not playing a top 5 USC team, a top 5, top 10 Michigan team, the number 1 overall team in Miami. Maybe that happens, but I'm not willing to bet on it. I don't think Miami's going to be the number 1 team in the country this year, especially when they roll into South Bend. But yeah, that's just such a hard comparison, Stephen, because the teams are just so vastly different.
They're completely different. Could they bring back memories of 1988 in a fond, like they're beating everybody kind of a way? 100%. But matching the team up player for player, position by position, it's just a different era of football. So it's just not a comparable type of deal. But from a, hey, let's go out and win the national championship, be super successful, have a postseason run, all of those kinds of things. Absolutely. Yes. Tommy, where would that safety from Purdue that transferred to Oregon, drafted this past spring, sit on the Notre Dame safety depth chart?
Well, if you're talking about Dylan Thieneman,
I think he has exactly. He's playing for the Bears now.
where would he sit on Notre Dame's depth chart? He'd probably be in the Luke Talich role. I would have to assume. I don't think he starts over one of Adon Schuler or Briante Johnson. He'd probably be rotating in, probably be third. He'd probably look. Dylan Thieneman is an athletic freak. I mean, big-bodied guy, flies to the football. I think his football IQ is lacking to varying degrees. Now, I would have liked to have seen what he could have done at Notre Dame, being coached during that time by Mike Mickens. Give him that type of athletic prospect. But yeah, I would say as of today, probably somewhere behind Adon Schuler, Briante Johnson.
I don't think he starts over the two guys that are there now.
Nope.
But he makes his way onto the field, just like Luke Talich is going to make his way on the field. That's where I'm at.
All right, Vince, back up to the top here. We've gotten everybody at least once. So back up to the top.
All right, Andy Wine and Cheese. How wedded it, Chris Ash? Oh, how wedded is Chris Ash to zone defense? Was the 25 zone's initial failure due to Ash really not knowing his players, or that Notre Dame isn't built to be a zone team? It is a complicated answer to that question. Yeah, it's neither one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, in short, Andy Wine and Cheese, it's neither. You can win a national title playing zone. You can win it playing man. I think there's this misconception amongst the Notre Dame fan base, which I understand because of how it's been talked about and how it's been perceived, that Al Golden played 99.99996% man coverage. And Chris Ash played 99.9999996% zone. And that's just not that. Neither one of those situations is reality.
That's not reality. That is not reality at all.
No. Al Golden played zone and called zone defense 60 to 65% of the time. Now, within that, there's different levels of zone defense. And there's different levels of man defense. You can run cover 2 man. You can run man across the board. Like last year against USC, Leonard Moore was man against Mekhi Lemon, but sometimes they would have man on the back end. So there's different levels of man versus zone. Having said that, I have no issue with Chris Ash is wedded to playing zone. We watched the Seattle Seahawks win the Super Bowl last year playing zone coverage. Archer, you're in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Ohio State didn't win a national championship in 2024 because they were asking Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun to run man coverage across the board 80% of the time. And so I have no issue if he's wedded to playing zone. My issue is how it gets taught. It needs to be aggressive. You can be aggressive playing man. You can be aggressive playing zone. We've talked about it on the show before. You need to be able to get hands and reroute defenders because it throws off the timing of the quarterback. We saw on multiple occasions against Arkansas, the pass rush had no shot at getting there. No shot whatsoever because Taylon Green was able to get the ball out in half a second or in a second and a half. That has to change. Zone fails when you give a wide receiver a 7-yard cushion on 3rd and 4. That's when zone fails. Zone fails when Miami, who all game were running crosser routes and underneath routes to Malachi Toney, and you're asking them to give them a 9-yard cushion in zone. That's when zone coverage fails. But you can play it aggressively as well. So that would be my answer to you. I have no issue if he's wedded to it. And the failure wasn't really you could attribute it to not knowing his players, but it's not like Chris Ash's epiphany was like, you know what? This is a man team, and I'm only going to call that from here on out. You can have a lot of success running zone. And that's where I think that's the happy medium that they have to find. That's just me, though.
I don't think I could have explained it any better, so I'm right with you.
Another one from Andy Wine and Cheese. Here you go, Vince. Let me ask this one of you. It's a special teams one. I saw kickers, and I was like, Vince, right away. Ooh, it's a buy-sell hold.
Love this.
Okay. So buy-sell hold, Notre Dame's place kicking is 95% inside of 40 yards in 2026. Do you buy, sell, or hold that?
I buy it.
And then we will see a carousel of kickers this year, or do we have one chosen guy already?
Spencer Porath. I sell that one ridiculously. You got Spencer Porath, then you've got a true freshman that just came in, and then you've got Schmidt, who's not a kicker, he's a punter, but he can back up as a kicker in an emergency situation. So there will not be a carousel of kickers. They've only got 2.5 on the roster in the first place. Spencer Porath, barring injury, will be the guy. He is the guy. There's no competition there. All right, Indy Wine and Cheese, how stoked are you for the IB magazine drop? This ends my line of questioning, Your Honor. Well, it dropped yesterday, Indy Wine and Cheese, and I can't even tell you how excited we were with the anticipation of dropping that magazine and dropping the workload that it meant. And I say that tongue-in-cheek to a degree. It was a lot of work, but it's a very fulfilling amount of work now that it's out. Very excited about it. Very, very excited about it.
It was so cool to see it come to life. I was talking about it yesterday on the show. It was announced that it was going live yesterday while we were live.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I was the journey of it was crazy. Because, Brian approached me and was like, "Hey, like I want to write the magazine. I really want to get this done." And so how we started it out was I wrote everything in a Google Doc. And so it's just so hard to picture it, like going from Google Doc to magazine and seeing it come to life and seeing that entire process. A lot of work, to Vince's point, but it was very gratifying work, and it was awesome to see it come together. So, Andy Wine and Cheese, if you're not on the board, hop on the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com and get your eyes on it firsthand because it is awesome. Got one in here from Trev Grassy Candles. Oh. Well, I can't tell if it's Vince Frozen or me.
That's a great sign. Oh, there we go. You're back. I don't know if it was me or you. Can you hear me?
I don't know either, but we're back to our regular scheduled programming regardless.
Yes. Okay. Rock and roll. Here we go. From Trev's Grassy Candles. Keon Keeley will reach his full potential if he does what?
Work with the proper work ethic and take to Charlie Partridge's coaching. All the physical tools are there. One of the things that we wanted to evaluate in the spring is like, okay, is the twitch still there? Is the athleticism there? Okay. To varying degrees, we were able to check those boxes. Now it's about how good of a football player can you become? Keon Keeley, with limited to arguably no coaching last year, was still able to get a sack in the college football playoffs. There's no question that I have about his physical ability.
Mm-hmm.
For him to reach his full potential, it's how does he continue to grow as a football player? Does he grow his football IQ? I think back to the mistake that Bryce Young made where he went B-gap instead of keeping outside contain. And that gave Marcel Reed the ability to run and pick up a first down. Can Keon Keeley avoid those mistakes? How does he continue to grow? And so that's where I'm at with Keon. If he does those things, I think he reaches his full potential.
Yeah, and I think the atmosphere that he's around is going to be much more conducive to him reaching his full potential. I think, I'll just leave it at that. I think he's going to have an opportunity to do it. He's not being asked to be the dude this year, though, either. He's asking that. I think Notre Dame is asking him to be very effective. They're asking him to be part of the rotation. And then next year, let's be a dude. I think there's not unrealistic expectations on him, which I think is big as well.
Yep. Agreed.
Another one from Trev's Grassy Candles. Does Notre Dame have the longest secondary in college football?
I mean, when you factor in the safeties, they definitely have one of. And you get 6'4" Luke Talmadge, 6'5" Joey O'Brien, 6'2", 6'3" Breonte Johnson, 6'2" Leonard Moore, 6'1", 6'2" DJ McKinney, 6'1", 6'2" Kari Adams, 6'3" Aiden Pouncey. Across the board, they're probably up there. I mean, I know that like schools like I think LSU has like a 6'4" corner. Yeah, I think Alabama might also have a 6'4" corner. I mean, I know Ohio State with Devin Sanchez, Archer, correct me if I'm wrong. He has like a Leonard Moore type of build, like that 6'1", 6'2", long, rangy. So they're definitely in the discussion. Off the top of my head right now, I would say yes across the board, considering starting lineup in depth. But it wouldn't shock me if a team like a Georgia had a guy that's like they have a 6'4" corner for no reason. So I'd see it being like that.
From Aiden Benami, is Styles Prescott an actual suitable backup left tackle, not for one game, but to finish a season or several games? Haven't heard as much positive things about him as Augustine, not as a left tackle, but overall.
I mean, is he an actual suitable backup left tackle? Absolutely. I mean, I would not make your judgment off of Styles Prescott based off of being inserted in the Miami game cold. I guess I use the term cold loosely, but cold off the bench against one of Akeem Mesidor, Ruben Bain. Like, that's just such a tough way to evaluate a player. You know, you come in, I understand, be ready whenever your name is called, but with all due respect, it's not like Emil Wagner or Anthony Knapp did much better against Ruben Bain or Akeem Mesidor. You know what I'm saying? So is he suitable? Absolutely. Well, earlier when I talked about Grayson McHugh having the potential to pass him up, that was not an indictment of Styles Prescott. That was more a testament to how good I think Grayson McHugh can be. If he gets named the backup left tackle at Notre Dame at some point this season, I don't think it's because Styles Prescott is bad. I think it's just because Grayson McHugh is that good. Like, when Notre Dame continues to recruit at this high of a level, those are going to be some of the decisions that they have to continue to make. I mean, think about next year's defensive line class. You know, I think Dom Hulack and Joe Reif had a heck of a spring, and I'm very excited to see what they do in fall camp. But it's not an indictment of them if Abraham Cisse comes in 2027 and is just physically a more gifted player. That's just a testament to how well Notre Dame has been recruiting. So those are my thoughts on Styles.
From Salty, do programs that go to the portal sparingly and only to address gaps have an advantage in recruiting, with recruits feeling that they won't be threatened by future portal players?
I mean, potentially. I mean, it's gotta play some sort of a factor, right?
Sure.
When I think of teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State and Oregon, who seem to have pretty good retention year over year, it's gotta be nice knowing that you're not threatened to be bumped down the depth chart by a one and done. Having said that, on the flip side of that coin, I go back to the conversation that we just had. Yeah, you might not be going to the portal, but you're bringing in one of the most physically gifted players in any given recruiting class. You know what I'm saying? Like, Brandon Innes has been at Ohio State longer than Jeremiah Smith. And even though they didn't go to the portal for a wide receiver, I don't think Brandon Innes would have felt any better of like, well, at least it's only Jeremiah Smith coming in, not a fifth-year portal guy from Arizona State or something. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at with that, Salty. It all forces the issue. I say all of that to say it's that iron sharpens iron, competition breeds success. Any cliche that you want to put in there, that's what it does. When you recruit at that high of a level, I firmly believe that that's what it does for a program, transfer portal or high school recruiting pipeline.
Yep, absolutely. And you can spin anything to benefit you when you're recruiting. That's a positive thing, obviously, that Notre Dame can spin and use. But, you know, Texas Tech goes to the portal every year. IU goes to the portal every year. They seem to somehow also have a decent recruiting class. So,
yep.
Another one from Salty. If you could only choose one, would you rather be elite on the D line or the O line? Assume that you are good, but not elite on the opposite line. We talking about like my team, or are we talking about me personally?
Probably the team.
So if I'm a coach, what would I rather have? Like, if I'm a coach, I would rather have an offensive line. I'll take my chances outscoring people and doing other things to help my D line moving forward. I can also shrink my D line to 3 and have 4 linebackers out there to kind of fill in the gaps as well. I can't do that on the offensive line. I need 5. And so I would rather have an offensive line dominant. And a dominant offensive line allows you to do literally whatever you want offensively. I can run the run and shoot. I can run the power game. I can do all kinds of different stuff offensively with a dominant offensive line. It's offensive line for me every time.
Apologies. Yeah, Vince, I'm an offensive guy. Very similar to you and Brian. I would rather have the ball in my hands at the end of the game than try to stop somebody from scoring at the end.
Sure. Yep.
So I would rather go offensive line there. Salty, you had a couple of recruiting questions in here. Those are definitely more suited for Brian. I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you. It's just he would be more apt to answer those questions than I would be. So
I'm ignoring.
Don't want to do you any disservice, but I haven't dug into the 2028 recruiting class nearly as much as what Brian has. So
It's been a few years since he brought me some salty Virginia peanuts at a tailgate, so I'm ignoring him when it comes to recruiting questions. Just kidding. I will say this, Salty. The message that you wrote on the lid of my salty Virginia peanuts that you gave me is hanging in my office. So I have that at school, and it means a lot to me. So being honest.
Okay, well now I am going to ignore salty Virginia.
Oh, that's great.
No, that's all good. All right, here we go.
Another one from Salty. With conferences beginning play week 3 at the latest, must Notre Dame always expect to play 1 to 2 of the top ranked teams on its schedules in week 1 through 3?
Not necessarily top ranked, but top perceived teams potentially. I mean, I think the Big Ten outside of Ohio State has not done a great job of adhering to a tough out of conference schedule, because the other piece of the Notre Dame USC game coming back in week 1 is it's kind of an under talked about part of that game coming back is IU was like, yeah, we don't want to play them. Teams like IU, Penn State, they're showing no desire to want to play tough out of conference games. And so I think they'll continue looking to the Big 12 and the SEC, maybe a Big 10 team. I mean, lower tier teams in the Big Ten have no issue going to play Notre Dame early on in the season, Purdue, Michigan State, teams like that. But I don't know if they view it more as an opportunity to get a win for a playoff resume or a pretty stout payday. I don't know which one comes first. I have an idea, but that's probably where I would be at. I mean, but future schedules, you just never know. You know, like in future seasons, they're going to be playing Clemson and Miami and Auburn, and I think they get Florida one year in November. So it's not at the end all be all,
right?
But that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to be hamstrung to a degree. I mean, if you look at Notre Dame's future schedule and their future opponents, a lot of their big time opponents are in the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, I think that's the reality we live in right now in college football. If they expand to 24, you're going to see more flexibility there. I mean, that's one of the reasons Pete Bavacqua is so much of a proponent of the 2014 playoff. It helps him with scheduling.
Yep.
It just does. Makes his job easier. Jay Melvin, who has the higher ceiling? Not who's better currently, Bryce Young or Keon Keeley, and how have they both been taking to Coach Partridge, especially Bryce?
To me, and not talking about like recruiting rankings or where they were at coming out of high school. I mean, we could be talking about the difference between a top 5 or a top 10 NFL draft pick here.
Mm-hmm.
They both have exceptionally high ceilings.
Mm-hmm. Not
where they're at right now. I would give the slight edge to Bryce Young. Just because I think physically, I mean, and again, Keon Keeley's 6'5", 275. Bryce Young is like 6'6", 260. And so it's not like we're talking about a disparaging size gap either. I would give the edge to Bryce Young because I think he also has the frame to play multiple positions at a different level. But I mean, again, the same thing with Keon Keeley. Jay Melvin, this is a very close question, but I would give the edge right now to Bryce Young. That's probably where I'd be.
That was my gut feeling as well. Like you said, they could both be outstanding at the next level. But right now I would say Bryce Young as well.
Speaking of Bryce Young.
Will Bryce Young, this is from Trev's Grassy Candles. Will Bryce Young have to move inside to be a star? Not my opinion, just curious.
No. I think you could see Bryce Young inside on some like third down nickel packages where he's like, they move the big end inside and then, they bring in like a Kingston or Jalen Sneed opposite of Boubacar to be an edge rusher. But no, he will not have to be a defensive tackle I think they would put on unnecessary weight for him because he's too small right now to play on the inside. He has the height and the length. I don't want him playing inside at 260 though. I think he would have to start getting up to that like 280, 285 range. And they already tried that song. Well, not they. Alabama already tried that song and dance with Keon Keeley, and he just lost a step. And I think we could see somewhat of the same with Bryce Young. I mean, I know he's his father's son, and Bryant Young was a dominant interior defensive tackle, but I don't think Bryce Young has to be that.
No.
I think he could be a dominant edge player. And then what they do with him at the next level is up to them at the next level. But no, he does not have to move inside to be a star. He could be a star this year at defensive end. Last couple here, Vince. Got one in here from Josh Phillips.
All right. Seen an article about Alabama players using morning practice as an excuse as to why they lost to Florida State. Is morning practice or afternoon practice better for the players?
I think having more, I think having more intestinal fortitude is better to not lose.
Exactly correct. State. It doesn't matter when you practice. And I can tell you, look, it's not the be all end all, but during 2-a-days, for example, or fall camp, whatever you want to say, most schools go in the morning and then they have meetings in the afternoon because all you're doing is football. And then once school starts, you have practice in the afternoon because you got classes during the day and in the morning. Now, we all know that not all academic institutions are created equal, and some places will have football practice in the morning and not worry about classes or maybe till the afternoon or whatever. But the vast majority of colleges, no matter the level, once school starts, they have practice in the afternoon. They just do. And the vast majority have practices in the morning during fall camp because coaches want their players to get out of bed and they want them to be active. They don't want them just laying around in bed. And if you have practice late in the day, that's exactly what they're going to do. That's what I would do. If I didn't have anything else going on, I'd be in bed too.
So I mean, Vince, we were both in college.
Correct.
I mean, if you didn't have an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. class, what were you doing? It wasn't getting up at 6 a.m. and lifting.
No, you were in class or you were in bed. And that's exactly what these players would do. And so you have practice in the morning, you have lunch, then you have meetings, that kind of a thing. It's very typical schedule. So yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on the intestinal fortitude comment. There's your big word for the day, buddy.
Thank you. I had to look it up. No, but in all seriousness here, Josh, because I do want to give your question its due diligence. Well, there we go. My good word for the day is just been expunged by that. But if there's a preference, I would probably say morning practice, but that has nothing to do with it's overlooking your opponent. It's not staying focused. It's not handling the moment. It's not handling the travel. I think that is a very lame excuse. Now, Josh, I'd be willing to go out on a limb here that article was also not said by any player or Kalen DeBoer. If it was, my opinion of him as a head coach or some of the players there would drastically change. But I would be shocked if a player or coach on Alabama staff was like, well, it was some morning practices. That's why we lost it. It's like, okay, so did you practice in the afternoon before you lost by 21 points to Georgia?
Right.
Or what was your practice schedule like when Indiana blew the doors off of you?
Yeah,
like, what was your practice schedule like then? Like, we could do this all day, but in all seriousness, Josh, I would probably say that it's I would say morning practices over anyone.
Jay Melvin, Vince, do you think Notre Dame will field one of those superhero teams like OSU in 24 or Georgia in 21-22 with multiple first-round picks and a roster filled with future NFL talent that dominates? Well, he asked me, do I think there's a bunch of future NFL draft picks on this roster? Like a bunch? Yeah, I do. Do I think they're all going to be leaving after this year? I'm not saying that. Now, we all know that the team that wins the national championship, a lot of times those players get overvalued in the NFL draft. There's going to be a bunch of guys that leave after this year. They're going to go to the NFL draft. Now, I don't know that they're going to be setting records for how many go in like the first round and, things like that. But you're going to have some fun in the 27 NFL draft. If you enjoy watching the draft to see Notre Dame players come off the board. And if you if you expound on that to like a couple years down the line, guys that contributed to what this team is going to do in 26, when those guys are draft eligible, yeah, you're going to see a bunch of guys.
No, I think that's a great point. I don't know if you're going to see the immediate return that some of those Georgia teams did or Ohio State did or like LSU in 2019, like when they had all those first round picks after that year. I mean,
right.
It's not a foregone conclusion that CJ Carr's gone, Adon Schuler's gone, Breonte Johnson is gone, any of those guys. I think there's a world where outside of Ashton Craig, their entire offensive line comes back.
Correct.
Will Black has to come back to college. Doesn't have to come back to Notre Dame, but he has to come back to college. I don't think after 1 year at left guard, Anthony Knapp leaves. I don't know if after 1 year at right tackle, Gerby Lambert leaves. I believe Sullivan Absher has the ability to come back, but I mean, there's a world where that happens. So, but yes, I'm with you, Vince. I do think they could. I just don't know if it'll all be in the 2027 NFL draft. We could see it in 27 and 28.
Right.
Got one from Josh Buffo.
All right, Josh. Does Captain Drake Bowen finally get the respect he deserves from the national media this season? And why is he not already looked at as a stud by BSPN or those media clowns? He was ranked as the number 6 overall linebacker by, I think, ESPN. I think it's one of those out. I don't know who. But they had KVA as number 1. They had Drake Bowen as number 6, like linebackers in the country. So he's getting some love in some areas, but not to the level that he should be getting. And I hope that, yes, this year that changes.
Yep, that ranking you're referring to is PFF.
The Pro Football Focus. Thank you.
Here's something, Vince. I think Drake Bowen gets more respect nationally than he does by his own fan base.
I think that's fair.
Because I don't see any writers from ESPN or PFF or CBS Sports calling for him to be benched in place of another player. But Drake Bowen gets more respect nationally, I think, by and large, than what he does. So, I believe Drake Bowen was somewhere 5'6" by PFF. Kingston Viliamasa was ranked number 1. So I think that's what I want to see, Josh. Is that I want to see Drake Bowen get the respect amongst the Notre Dame fan base. The second he misses a tackle, it's bench him, put in KVA, bench him. Here's the thought, but play them both together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's where I want to be at with when I start talking about Drake Bowen. So I'm with you. I'm down for any reason to clown on ESPN or any media clown, but they've actually done a relatively good job at putting them there. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, the entire rankings list, I'm pulling it up right now, that came out from PFF. I wrote an article about it, I believe, earlier last week. Yep. So Kingston was ranked number 1. Drake Bowen was ranked number 6. Yeah, the entire order goes Kingston at 1, Rasheem Biles from Texas at 2, Austin Romine at Texas Tech at 3, Chris Cole from Georgia at 4, Nicholas Rodriguez from Missouri at 5, Drake Bowen at 6, Ben Roberts from Texas Tech at 7, Sammy Brown from Clemson at 8, John Curry from Texas Tech at 9, and then Ethan Weslowski from Oklahoma State at number 10. Thought it was interesting. No Big Ten team had a representative in this list, and Texas Tech and Notre Dame are the only 2 schools with 2 players on there, which I thought was interesting. Last one here from Salty Virginia Peanuts, Vince, to take us home.
All right. He says that the college football playoff expands to 24 teams. Beyond 2033, will the USC rivalry return to the traditional weeks, as USC would be better able to lose to Notre Dame and make the CFP?
Salty, I wish I had a good answer for this one, but as of right now, USC dictates whether we can get into whether or not how we like how Notre Dame handled the situation, or whether it should be played in week 14 or go back to the traditional October, November rotating year. Whether we like that or not, USC dictates the terms of this rivalry as of today. They do. And so whether we're okay with them being back on the schedule or not. So I have no idea. I posed a question yesterday. I'm very curious to see what happens after this 4-year agreement is up. But until that point, I have no idea. It would make sense for it to go back, because if they expanded 24 teams, they could lose to Notre Dame by 100 in the final week of the regular season. But if they go from 12th to 21st, guess who's still in the playoffs? So that's where I'm at with that one, Vince.
The reality is they could lose to Notre Dame every single year and still win the Big Ten and make it into the playoffs. So Notre Dame has no bearing whatsoever on their playoff chances, and the fact that they say that it does is nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Notre Dame in 2022 and still missed the playoffs.
Right. Exactly. It is what it is.
Well, Vince, that'll do it, man. This is a fun show. Fall camp right around the corner. I believe IB Nation Sports Beat goes live tonight at 5:05 p.m., recapping a lot of what Marcus Freeman talked about today in his press conference. So definitely not going to want to miss that show. On your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Be a premium message board subscriber. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. Magazine is live. Fall camp's right around the corner. Brian has intel pieces out about the position groups that he's hearing about going into fall camp. I'm going to have stuff coming out about Marcus Freeman's press conference. Great time to join the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Vince, pleasure as always, my man.
Yes, sir.
We will see you guys next time here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.